All right, we're good.
All right, very good. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, October 5th meeting of the Carrboro Town Council. We'll start out first with our roll call, Kathy.
Mayor Lydia LaVille.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem and Council Member Barbara Foushee.
Here, present.
Council Member Jacqueline Gist.
Present.
Council Member Randy Haven O'Donnell.
Present.
Council Member Susan Romaine.
Present.
Council Member Damon Siles.
Present.
And Council Member Sammy Slade.
Present.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll start out our meeting like we usually do with a poem by our poet laureate, Fred Joyner. I see him in the waiting room there.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, good evening, Fred.
Hey, Fred.
How y'all doing?
Good, good.
You don't have a sidekick tonight?
No, she was doing some math homework. So we were sitting here working on that. So I'm going to read a poem. I was running a little late tonight, but if any of you ever come to my house, you'll see that I have books strewn all over the place, to my wife's chagrin. So it's my way of trying to convince her to help me build some built-in bookshelves. So I picked up this book. It's a newer one that I just got. It's by a poet named Sean Ballard. It's called Flight. And so I'd make a habit sometime. This one seemed appropriate. How I Survived. And I dedicate this to some friends. I recently had another associate pass away. Two really good, one friend and one associate pass away. And so this is to them, How I Survived. I stayed in late nights. I shot late night hoops. I perfected windmills and tomahawks. I let my knees burn holes in her mother's carpet. I mixed top ramen with blood sausage, Jesus with mint juice. I developed foresight and bad omens, packed juicy fruit, a sixth sense. I avoided gaggles of geese, murders of crows, and uttered no language. I left when it was time to leave. I arrived too late. I prayed before I walked. I prayed before I prayed. I focused my gaze upon the ground. I never gazed too long. I honored my father and mother. I had a father and mother. I ran errands. I ran home. I completed chores. I didn't shoot. I shot the breeze. I learned to clown and mean mug. I listened for rain. I listened for gunshots. I hope to God they didn't figure me out. I hung up the phone. She had a nice figure, so I figured her yours. I locked the storm door when there were no storms. And if someone knocked, I wasn't quick to answer. I moved away. I moved back. I moved away again. I remembered what to forget. I wrote this poem. I picked that poem just because, all three, with the three people that just recently passed away, friends or associates of mine, have all been Black men. And this poem really speaks to, I think, the randomness and the things that Black men have to deal with, and Black people. But I was thinking specifically about my Black male friends who have to navigate this world and the randomness of things that they have to deal with. And so, yeah, this book is it's out on Tupelo Press. It's a little chat book, a short book of poems, and it's called Flight by Sean Ballard. So thank you for indulging me this evening.
Thank you, Fred. Thanks for sharing that with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.
All right, let's see here. Council members, we have a couple of proclamations here. The first one is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And Kathy, I'm not sure if we have someone here to receive this or not.
There she is. Joy Shaver.
Great. I know we were going to seek her, so. Hey, hi, Joy.
Hi, thank you all for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. This is a proclamation that we issue every year, and I'm happy you could be with us. And after I read it, if you'd like to make a few comments, we'd appreciate that. So,
Of course.
okay, so this is recognizing Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior in a relationship that is used by one partner to gain or maintain control over another intimate partner, it includes not only physical abuse, but also mental abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, stalking, and sexual abuse. And whereas domestic violence occurs in every community, it affects people of all genders, races, ethnicities, sexual orientations, and ages. And whereas in October 1981, the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence held a day of unity to connect people across the United States who were working to stop violence against women and children. This grew into Domestic Violence Awareness Month, first observed in 1987, designated by Congress in 1989, and observed annually since then. And whereas, according to a 2015 Centers for Disease Control and Prevention data brief, 25% of women and over 10% men in the United States have experienced and reported physical violence, sexual violence, or stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetime. When estimates of unreported crimes are included, this jumps to 36% of women and 33% of men. And whereas due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the lockdowns that were implemented to slow the spread of the disease created a condition in which the victims of domestic violence were trapped with their abusers. They were less able to contact outside agencies for help, while the stress of the pandemic, along with the isolation and economic hardship it caused, fueled the violence that was inflicted. And whereas organizations such as the Compass Center for Women and Families provide vital services to victims of domestic violence in Carrboro and the surrounding areas, and whereas during this month, we commit to standing with survivors of domestic violence and to doing our utmost to extend hope and healing to all who need it. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Lydia Lavelle, hereby proclaim October 2021 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the town of Carrboro. I encourage residents to show support for victims and survivors of domestic violence and to work toward a future when all people can feel safe in their relationships and in their homes. This is the 5th day of October 2021. So, Joy, thank you so much for being here with us. If you'd like to make a few comments, we'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and, for your deep awareness and recognition of the multiple varied forms of violence that make up domestic violence. We are so grateful to have the support of the City Council and the Mayor of Carrboro in this really hard and important work. And we are so grateful to you for partnering with us as we serve people who are experiencing domestic violence. We are, really proud of being able to expand our services in the last few years to include emergency housing for domestic violence survivors. And I also just want to take this moment to say, if you are experiencing domestic violence or, your loved one is, please do give us a call at 919-929-7122. That is our hotline number. And, we are available 24/7 for both people who are experiencing domestic violence and their loved ones.
Thank you. And thanks for being here. We always like to kind of lift up the Compass Center this time of year also. We appreciate the work that you do. So thank you very much. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, council members, we have one other proclamation. We did have one for Community Planning Month. We're actually going to put that one off until next week. But we have one on Walk to School Day. So I'll read that one. And Kathy, I don't know if Zach or if anyone from planning wants to come over while I read this one.
I'll bring Zach over.
Hey, good evening, Zach.
Good evening.
Hi there. I just thought we'd bring you over while I read this proclamation about Walk to School Day. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So this is another annual proclamation. Whereas the National Household Travel Survey found in 2017, only 10.4% of children walked or biked to school, a decrease from 13.7% in 2001. And whereas the National Survey of Children's Health found that in 2018, about 16% of North Carolina children were obese, compared to 15.5% nationwide, and about 45% of North Carolina children had 3 days per week or less of rigorous physical activity, compared to 43.7% nationwide. And whereas the town's Safe Routes to School Action Plan, the 2012 plan, emphasizes the multitude of benefits associated with increased physical activity for children, including weight control, bone health, more restful sleep, and better focus in school. And whereas the town's 2020 updated bicycle plan recommends continuing partnership with local schools and implementing the recommendations in the Safe Routes to Schools plan. And whereas the town's 2020 Community Climate Action Plan recommends accelerating efforts to support the Safe Routes to School program, including coordination with the school district and PTAs to promote bike and walk to school days. And whereas the Partnership for a Walkable America founded Walk to School Day in the United States in 1997 and began with events in 2 cities, Chicago and Los Angeles. And whereas the Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools Board of Education endorsed the Carrboro Safe Routes to School Action Plan, which recommends establishing a regular walk and bike to school day. And whereas schools within the town of Carrboro have participated in Walk to School Day since October 2011. And whereas Walk to School Day events provide unique opportunities for parents and students to engage with other members of their community while also protecting our environment by reducing dependency on motor vehicle travel. Now therefore be it resolved, I, Lydia Lavelle, Mayor of the town of Carrboro, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, October 6th as Carrboro Walk to School Day, this the 5th day of October 2021. So Zach, do you want to say anything about this year's Walk to School Day?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, we're taking a lighter hand this year. We know everything with pandemic restrictions. We know just kind of from the schools we talked to, Carrboro Elementary was pretty interested, so we've been kind of working with them on some different things. As far as the other schools, nothing focused this year. We know pandemic conditions. We didn't want to try to over-encourage gathering and things like that. But I mean, eye to the future, hopefully, by to school day, we'll be back to normal. We'll find out, but we're always trying to help promote this. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Zach. Yeah, I saw some information, I guess, that Laura and you had sent out to the schools or whatever, encouraging kids to walk to school tomorrow, even though there's no organized big group doing it. So, and hopefully walk to school tomorrow and then on too. So thank you. Okay, let's see. Council members, before we get to announcement of upcoming meetings, I just wanted to see if someone would make a motion to add a closed session at the end of this meeting.
So moved.
And Randy, are you going to say what for the purpose of?
I don't have that in front of me. I know I saw the email.
Yeah,
It's personnel. It's
Okay.
discussion of personnel.
Discussion.
Personnel, procedures.
All right, very
Personnel
good. Thank you.
procedures.
Motion by Randy, second by Damon. All in favor, say aye. Randy,
Yeah, aye.
Barbara,
Aye.
me, aye. Sammy,
Aye.
Susan,
Aye.
Jackie,
Aye.
and Damon.
Aye.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, so let's move on here then to announcement of upcoming meetings. Kathy.
All right. Between now and your meeting next week, first I'll say we kicked off the Youth Advisory Board season. We had our first meeting today at 4:30, so it was great to see them again. On October 7th, there are several meetings. You've got the Environmental Advisory Board, the Appearance Commission, Northern Transition Area Advisory Committee, Planning Board, and Transportation Advisory Board, all meeting October 7th. The Recreation and Parks Commission will meet October 11th, and then y'all will meet again on October the 12th.
Okay, does anyone have anything to add to those meetings or, okay. I was just going to mention, I think I sent out an email about this, but just, I will miss next week's meeting. So Barbara has agreed to chair it. Just wanted to throw that out there so folks know I'm going to be out of town. All right, so moving on then now to public comment, Kathy. I think we have a few people signed up.
I'm sorry. I got my.
I'm so sorry. Didn't see you, Jackie.
I think the stormwater advisory. I think stormwater is also meeting Thursday night. Am I right, Kathy? I thought I saw that, but I could be wrong.
Finding the mute button when I'm on the internet page is hard. October 14th is the date the Stormwater Advisory Committee has
Okay.
listed on the calendar.
Okay. Sorry, got them mixed up.
It's okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so on to public comment, Kathy.
Shelley Welch and Kevin. Okay, I see you. All right, Zach, I'll send you back over.
Shelley, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, I see that you're here. I can hear you. I can't see you though, but if you'd like to begin, you can.
Okay, yeah, for some reason our video is not working, so we will jump right in. Catherine did send over a PowerPoint PDF for this evening.
Yeah, you want me to show that? Okay.
Please.
You can see us okay, correct?
Yes.
All right. There's no, I'm looking to make sure there's nothing I've got turned on that's stopping your camera. I wanted to double check.
We can see it now, so you can go ahead and begin if you want, Kevin or Shelley. Are you talking? Okay.
Yeah. So what you see here is the repeat of PDF from last week. We're seeing this begin because we have not heard a response. Town of Carrboro has failed to respond to the excavation that has been complained about on the Merritt gravel pit. This is in violation to the land use ordinance violation NOV letter sent by Marty to the Merritts back in 2019. And if you move down to the third page, Catherine, you'll see quotes by Lydia Lavelle talking about how we trust Bob and the Bro Law Firm about the advice she's providing or he's providing, and the Bro Law Firm is providing the town council. Moving down to the next page, we are seeing the excavation that was complained about back in July. And if we move to the next area, the white boxes there show what it looked like previously. And by September, here we are. Trees removed, excavation, which is a consistent violation of the NOV letter sent back in 2019. This too is also important and hard work. Also, just like the proclamations of the monarch butterfly, domestic violence, and all the other proclamations we hear every week. The reason why it's important and hard work is because if you allow people to violate the land use ordinance and slap them on the wrist, they are going to continue doing what they're doing because they know there's no consequences. This is excavation in violation to an NOV letter sent by Marty Roop from the town of Carrboro. Where is Martin Roop in this case? Where is Trish? Where's Nick on this? We have not heard anything in reference to you receiving this complaint or that you're doing anything about the excavation in a town of Carrboro watershed jurisdiction. So we are looking for answers. We're looking for a response that you've received the complaint and that you're actually doing something about it. The other steps that we expect to occur is that you have protocols for the merits, because this is not going to be the last time this is going to happen. Because when you sit around and wait for something to happen, it's months later, weeks later, and here we are looking at the same issues. So I'm looking for responses back from the town of Carrboro, acknowledging they've received the complaint.
Okay, are you both finished, Kevin and Shelley?
No, I'm not. It's weird because I just tried to get on the video with my own computer, and that's also not showing any video. It seems very odd. That's never happened before. So I want to talk about, there you go. Yeah. It's not going to work tonight. So strange.
Just click the button. Yeah,
we've checked everything.
I clicked the button to say, I just want to put it on record that there is nothing going on technology-wise that's blocking the camera.
Okay, well, it just seems strange to me that both videos are not working. I want to address the sign complaint that we made. Understand that the Merritts have removed their business signs, one from 870 and one from 3200. However, the letter sent by Martin Roop does not address the political signs in any manner, except a kind of cryptic wording in which he says, the town has determined that your clients are in compliance with the sign ordinance, subject only to obtaining a sign permit. Obviously, there's no sign permit for political signs. And the implication of that statement is that the town of Carrboro has found that the political signs on both 870 and 3200 are legal. So I have sent you all an email showing you the parts of your very own LUO that the political signs do not comply with. But what we need is an exact statement from the planning department that you approve of those signs. If you cannot put that in writing, that's problematic. Once we get that, we are going to figure out how we need to appeal that. But in the meantime, I am going to make my own political sign facing the Merritt gravel pit that states exactly what I need to state and complies with your fantasy LUO that you are now not enforcing. I also, Catherine, would like to do a public records request of the property on Smith Level Road that promptly took down his Trump signs. I will send you the address via email after the election, because I suspect that the town of Carrboro received a complaint about that and handled it forthwith. You are afraid of the Merritts, and you do not take action against the Merritts. And I am so god-awful tired of seeing all of you every Tuesday night. I am so tired of having you on my calendar. I am so tired of hating you as much as I do. I absolutely loathe every single one of you. When I think about you, I feel like I'm going to vomit. I hate the way you have hijacked our lives, and I hate the way you do nothing to enforce what you have spent taxpayer money to create. Now I'm done,
All right.
Lydia.
All right, Kathy, we can cut off Shelley and Kevin now. And I'd like to ask Nick, if you would like to just briefly address what Shelley and Kevin said. And then I know we have one more speaker too.
Well, the town did make a determination, and its determination was based on an interpretation and application of the ordinance that complied with constitutional First Amendment limitations. That's really all I can say about that.
All right. Thank you. And then I think if we, I think I'd like to move on, I guess, to the third speaker, Kathy, because I'm not sure what that adds in this or anything.
Okay.
Or if
Ian
I'm not sure what.
Richardson, I'm bringing you over.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Richardson.
Good evening. I'll be brief. First, regarding the sign issue, my clients are in receipt of the letter, or I'm in receipt of it, and plan to share it with my clients. And we plan to make the application for a sign permit. And from our perspective, the sign issue is then closed. Regarding any of the excavation, my client.
Mr. Richardson, I'm so sorry. I'm not sure if folks here know who your client is. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I represent Merritt's Gravel Pit and the Merritts individually, and TIK LLC, which is their land holding company. But at any rate, they plan to make sign permit application, and at that point, we consider the issue closed based on the letter regarding the excavation. That is being done in accordance with my client's engineer, the mining engineer, who has been in contact with the state mining engineer. And frankly, we would invite the town of Carrboro, any of its representatives, any of you out to take a look if you would like. We're not trying to hide anything. My client's operating a business as he has been doing, and as Mrs. Welch was well aware of whenever she decided to purchase property next to an active mine. So that's all I have to add. I'm happy to answer any questions I can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Sammy?
Thanks, Mr. Richardson. Did you see the photo that was shared of the digging that's in question? And my understanding is that that half of the property is no longer in mining permit, but rather under the jurisdiction of the town and within the watershed. Are you still claiming that they're allowed to mine there?
Well, they do not have a mining permit over that piece of property. So I believe that we are trying to have a conversation with the town, with our engineer, and hopefully determine what can and can't be done there. But we are working with the state of North Carolina and the mining department about that section of the property.
And what do you mean we are working with the state of North Carolina on that section of the property? Is that typical for non-mine permitted properties, that you work with the state instead of the local jurisdiction?
Well, we're happy to work with you guys as well. If you have any input about what's going on, we'd be happy to talk more about that.
Yeah, so I just want to state for the record, I am interested in us going beyond a cease and desist and securing and safeguarding our watershed. Our LUO is in place to safeguard the water we drink. The fact that this isn't currently mine permitted and does fall under our jurisdiction means that we have an obligation to enforce our laws. And so I would be interested in hearing from staff what beyond cease and desist, what remediation is possible given that our land use ordinance has been violated.
Okay, and Mr. Richardson, you don't have to respond yet. I just wanted to turn it over to Mr. Manager. Mr. Manager, you hear what's going on here. Do you mind responding to this?
So there's a meeting scheduled tomorrow with Mr. Richardson and our town attorney as well to review any outstanding issues. And so we'll know more tomorrow afternoon about where this may go at this point.
All right, thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Richard. And so you will keep us apprised and or relevant parties apprised of what's going on. So
yes.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it. All right, Mr. Richardson, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Moving on then to the consent agenda. Mr. Manager.
The first item is the approval of the minutes from June 22nd, 2021 and September 14th, 2021. And there are some changes on the June 22nd changes. There are amendments by Councilmembers Slade and Romaine. And on September 14th, changes by Councilmembers Fushi, Slade, Romaine, Mayor Lavelle, and Sells.
And I gave that list to Mr. White. And if I have missed anyone on June 22nd, if he missed saying anyone, that's me, not him. So I've been trying to keep up with those, but
thank you, Kathy. We get it. We understand.
Okay, the second item is amendments of the Town Code, Chapter 11, to allow managed natural landscapes. This item is to provide the council with the proposed Town Code amendment to allow managed natural landscapes. The third item is a request for a CUP permit extension for 300 East Main.
Okay, so council members, I think I want us again just to pull the minutes from June 22 until after our discussion. But if people would move the minutes of September 14 and item 2, because I think Susan wanted us to pull item 3. So is that a motion by Barbara? Are you asking a question, or is that a motion?
Yeah, so June 22nd is being pulled, and say what you're moving again. I'm sorry. And did Damon say take number 3?
Yeah, what would be moved would be the other minutes, September 14, and number 2 would be moved, but we're pulling the minutes of June 22nd and we're pulling number 3.
Fine, I can move that.
All right.
I motion to move that.
Motion by Barbara. Had you seconded? Had you raised your hand, Damon, to move that?
No, I just was agreeing to pull number 3.
Okay, so motion by Barbara. Is there a second before we go to Sammy?
I'll second.
Second by Randy. Yes, Sammy?
Just for the record, again, I'd like to restate, I find it backward that we are going to have a conversation instead of determining what was said on the minutes of September 22nd to help inform our conversation. We will be having a conversation that will help inform what was said on September 22nd.
Yeah,
I find that to be really problematic and not in the spirit of what approval of minutes should be.
Yeah, well, I think since you added on some language kind of saying what the interpretation of what happened, we need to be part of that conversation. I mean, it might stay the way it is. And look, I think it should be part of that.
We have a video, Lydia, that's very clear about what was actually said. There's nothing that we can converse about after the fact that will change what is said in that video. So I would suggest we watch the video and then all agree with what was said or not, instead of having a conversation retroactively about it.
Didn't you send the video out? I think everybody probably already watched it.
I would think so, but I'm not seeing, people are still wondering about what it says.
I don't think they're wondering. I think everybody's just
thinking
whatever they think. I'm sorry, Lydia.
I need to grab my gavel. I actually listened to the video several times, Sammy. I actually even have a transcript of it. So when we get to it, I just would prefer it be part of the conversation with the other. I mean, we can approve the minutes at that time if you want. I can pull up the transcript of exactly what was said if we need to see what was said. Because I do think there's some ambiguity there, but we should talk about it, I think, before we approve the minutes. So, so anyway, let's, so we have a motion and a second. And so all in favor of that motion and that second, say aye. Damon?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Randy?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Okay, all right, very good. So now we're on to number 3, which originally Susan had wanted to pull, and I think others maybe have something to say about it, but go ahead, Susan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Lydia. So I was going to, I think some members may also be talking about some suggested bicycle improvements, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the concern I had, which is that I totally understand the financial pressures that the applicant has been facing through the pandemic, and I really appreciate, I know that they have been trying to accommodate the tenants in 300 East Main, and I really appreciate that. But at the same time, reading through the letter from the applicant, it seems very vague in terms of when some commitments will be made. And if the applicant is not in the financial position to follow through on some commitments, I thought a way that we could work around that is that we actually make the extension of the CUP conditional upon the applicant applying for an Orange County Community Climate Action Grant. From what I've heard, the county has really tried to make these grants user-friendly. It also seems like the types of things, whether it's the EV stations that seem to be cost prohibitive right now for the applicant, or possibly some bicycle improvements or the solar panels, these are all very typical of the types of things covered by these grants. And also, I wanted to note that the Orange County Sustainability Coordinator is very good working with the applicants should they have questions. So I was going to ask that the extension of the CUP would be conditional upon the applicant filing a grant. We've just missed this grant cycle, so the next grant cycle for fiscal year 22-23 would be in May of next year.
Okay, let me just say this. Thank you, Susan. Let me say this before I hear some other comments. And I know that I see, Kathy, that Laura Van Sant at least is in the waiting room, and I'm not sure who else is there from 301 East Main Street Partners. You might want to bring them over, but because we got a let's see, they might be coming over right now, so I don't want them to miss this. But one thing I wanted to say, folks, is, this is on our agenda tonight, and the current permit, it expires on October 9th. So it expires this weekend coming up. So let's have that in our minds as we continue to talk to the applicant here about some concerns or questions we have, that it does expire this weekend. And so if we want to place any conditions on something, we might have to extend it again a bit, for a few more months or whatever, if we're going to place a condition, for example, Susan, like you're talking about, which actually is a good idea, especially if it doesn't cost much money to Main Street Partners. But I know, Laura, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but within the last half hour to an hour, we've gotten several emails with some questions about bicycle parking and some bicycle issues. I know y'all addressed some of that, but I know those are some of the concerns that were raised. And so which council member had their hand up that wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit with Laura? I haven't got to read them all yet, but I see a bunch came in. Damon, you want to go first? Is your
well, I guess we got the letter from Laura and her partners as part of the agenda packet. And obviously, I don't think Laura saw the emails that we received.
Yeah, right. That's why I wonder if someone could summarize. I haven't even read them yet. I just got back and saw.
I think Laura has heard several of the concerns before. They were discussed 6 months ago when we considered this permit extension last time, and it, raising questions about the suitability of the bicycle parking on the site. And we've discussed this 6 months ago, right? The fact is that this permit was approved a dozen years ago originally, right? The project was approved a dozen years ago. Since that time, there have been at least 2 major revisions to our bicycle parking standards. There probably will be more to come. And I think there's sort of this gap between what the expectations were at that time and how they've evolved since then. And I think, Laura, you addressed some of that now. I guess I'd just be interested in, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about what y'all have done on the property, what you're planning to do on the property. And I do have some thoughts about how to move forward, and including what Susan has expressed here an interest in here as well. But I think, Laura, you've even met a couple times with some of the folks who expressed these concerns about and walked through the property with them. And maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about what you've done in the last few months.
Yeah, sure. And let me back up a little bit and just say, Susan, I'm all for your suggestion. Actually, Brennan is a friend of my husband's, so no problem at all to set up something with Orange County and try to proceed with that. That'd be great, because certainly if we could do something with electric vehicle charging stations or solar panels or whatever, that would be wonderful. The financial constraints are certainly real right now, but if there's some assistance out there that can help move that forward faster. So I'm totally 100% in favor of that condition. Dating back to the bicycle things, yeah, I have met on a number of occasions with various bicycling advocates in Carrboro on the property. And I think sometimes we just have to agree to disagree a little bit on some of certainly there are some things we can do better. I think we mentioned in the letter, we need to replace one of the old wave racks in front of Womancraft that is kind of a little wobbly and we couldn't really fix. And we have some U racks on order, and going forward, as we replace or improve bicycle parking, we certainly use the racks that are required at the time. And we've also started doing some work on getting some more artistic but functional bicycle racks. And I've been very, as a cyclist myself, I've been very vocal with my partners as we do that. They, something doesn't need to just look artsy, it needs to actually work, because I've certainly been in other cities and seen fancy bicycle racks, and some of them look great, but it's like, well, how would you put more than one bike on that thing? So I'm certainly cognizant of that. So we plan to move forward with that. Where I do kind of disagree a little bit with some of the people who toured the site is that we have not met the spirit of providing bicycle racks in sufficient quantity or in locations where they're convenient. I think when our permit was back up with you guys a few months ago, I included a map showing where all the racks are, and they're scattered all over the property, pretty well dispersed, I think, to be convenient to most of the businesses. And I know that there's some metrics out there about wanting the bicycle parking to be as close as the closest non-handicapped vehicle spot. And for many of our businesses, that is in fact the case, which is pretty good on a site that wasn't designed for that, because that certainly, I don't know if it's the rule now, but it certainly was not the rule when the site was designed. So we are trying to, certainly as far as providing enough bicycle racks to serve the needs of customers. That's in our interest as well as the interests of other folks in the town. And we'll continue to do that and continue to upgrade them as we replace them with better racks than in some cases we have out there now. But we do have quite a few of the inverted U racks out there right now.
Yeah, thanks for that, Laura. And that sort of matches what your letter in response to the agenda item was tonight. I think from my perspective as somebody who often parks his bicycle on the property, and having talked, of course, to many of the same advocates you've spoken with, is that, where there is bicycle parking, for example, it's often not installed correctly or in great shape, and it's often not accessible. So one that comes to mind for me is the one directly in front of the Vecino Brewery. There are inverted U racks there, but they're essentially blocked by a parking space. So you have to really work hard to get to it. So that's just one example. There's also the racks in front of Fleet Feet that are not installed very well. There are the ones by the Art Center that are actually installed incorrectly, that makes them almost unusable, or cuts half of them off from being used properly. In any case, without getting into all the details about that in this setting, I think we asked for, I think, in the resolution that we approved 6 months ago around this permit and extending the permit for 6 months, we asked for 5 specific issues to be addressed. And so I guess I would just refer my council colleagues to those 5 specific things, keeping in mind that those did not encompass all of the other great things we'd like to see happen around bicycle parking, right? But we did ask for 5 specific things. It seems to me that Laura has largely responded to those 5 specific asks. I guess I want to make sure that to acknowledge that, and then thank Laura for doing that, while also acknowledging that we do still have very different standards now when it comes to bicycle parking, and that certainly my expectation, and I hope my colleagues' expectation, will be that as modifications are made to this permit, as you continue to build out the site, as has been approved, that the standards that you will meet the new standard, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything new that done, we'll certainly do that. Yeah.
So that's my intention, certainly, in voting on a future modification, I think, would be to press that point pretty hard. The second point I wanted to just share, this is really more for my colleagues, is you'll remember that several years ago, we updated the land use ordinance. Previous to this decision several years ago, typically a permit that came up for renewal would only come up for a 1-year extension. And there was no such thing as a 2-year extension. We adopted the 2-year extension by default as a sort of new default, because we were seeing a lot of permits come through that were very routine and just needed to be updated. And it seemed like a lot to kind of ask for, every single time, to come before us every single year for a renewal. But we left ourselves the option to, stick with the 1-year practice. So I think, one thing that came to mind as a way to move forward for me would be, and this would address, I think, Susan's idea as well, is to agree to renew this permit as we normally would, but stick with the 1-year extension, with the expectation that there would be this going after this grant opportunity that Susan has identified in that period. Sounds like the next cycle will be coming up in the next year. And then also, I don't know if this is something that can be added to the permit, but this is consistent with the language we included last time, which is that the applicant will, or the property owner will continue to use the preferred rack types with any new bike rack installations or replacements. That was one of our previous asks. So that at least in this interim period, if there are any replacements done or any repairs or whatever, or any new bike racks installed, they'll use the more current standard.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just an idea for us to consider. Again, giving us some more, I think, acknowledging that Laura has essentially done at least responded to our previous 5 comments and addressed them, but also recognizing that we have some interest in keeping an eye on what comes next.
Yeah, thank you, Damon. Laura, you want to respond?
The only thing I agree with you completely, Damon. The only thing I would say is just the language that you use with the conditions about the inverted U racks is something that would not preclude doing a more artistic rack, again, that functions like one, but doesn't have to be specifically an inverted U rack.
Yeah, thanks for that, Laura. Yeah, the language, and this is pretty much what we said last time too, was that continue to use the inverted U bike racks, and it says, or other preferred styles as described in the land use ordinance, which kind of captures, I think, what you're talking about.
Okay. I'm seeing some general kind of nods. Does anyone have any comments or questions about that, Sammy?
Yeah, thanks, Damon, for identifying a path forward, and Laura for trying to address some of these issues. I think what this will allow this coming year is for us to really put together our questions and requests from the applicant. Come this reapproval of this permit in 1 year, we will have had a conversation, hopefully a couple of months before the applicant, so that they can have a chance to respond in a way that is reflective of where we have changed and what our expectations are in terms of bike parking and transportation. Now, one of the things about and reasons for renewals of permits is that time changes. People, councils, communities, understandings of context, and it is perfectly appropriate for us to go outside of the CUP process and request for reapproval of an existing permit to update things that need to be in place. So I would be in favor of what Damon's proposing, but I would like to work with bike advocates to really nail down exactly what it is that is a problem with the property, and 3 months in advance of this permit coming up, sharing out with the developer in hopes that they will be able to respond if that's sufficient time, and if not, then Laura, please let me know. And then include that as a requirement for the permit extension at that time.
Yeah, Sammy, maybe even not 3 months, maybe 6 months, because 3 months is the middle of the summer. So maybe end of springtime if you're going to make that part of the motion here. Damon?
And just one quick follow-up question. This might be a question for the manager, or even actually maybe even the attorney. One of the kind of not concerns, that sounds strong. One of the things I've wondered in this past 6 months is, because this is in the context of a CUP, and often when we're talking about CUPs, we're in this sort of weird quasi-judicial mode, right, where communications between council members and the applicant, et cetera, are kind of meant to be limited and so on. But in the context of a permit renewal for a conditional use permit, and maybe Nick, can you help answer this? Is it okay for, say, an individual council member to have a conversation with Laura, for example, about in that intervening period about, hey, here's what I've been noticing, or here's some ideas, or would you be willing to consider, I just don't know if that's appropriate or not, given that this is in the context of deciding whether to renew a permit.
Nick, did you hear that? And if Nick did not, well, maybe he'll come back to us. But Marty, are you kind of understand what Damon's asking?
I do understand, and I'm curious to hear from Nick about it. I don't think the renewal is quasi-judicial. It's not like we're having a hearing, but I would still be curious to hear from Nick.
Okay. Well, I guess it doesn't absolutely have to be answered right now, but in any case, I would like to, if other council members agree. this
Yeah.
seems like the way to move. So.
It certainly seems relevant. Yeah, Damon, I agree. But I think that question, even if we don't get that answered here very soon, we could still move forward on perhaps extending the permit and with the kind of adaptations, I guess, that you suggested, if they're allowed. So Randy, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I just, and you'll have to forgive me because the last time I looked at the grant process, it's been a few months, and I really want to know, this is just based on the developer making an application, or in fact being granted, or is there an assumption that if the grant is applied for, it will be received? I just want to be clear about that.
I think the way the motion is developing would be that that as part of the renewal, Laura is kind of agreeing that they will pursue and apply for a grant. I mean, and they won't have any way of knowing if they get it or not, but I think the pursuing, Susan, I think that was your intention, right? To pursue and hopefully end up getting the grant, but I think that's what it would be. So.
Okay.
Absolutely. Just that it is submitted.
All right, let's see. Nick, are you in striking distance? Nick Herman? All right, Nick must have stepped out of the room, so we don't have an answer to that. Are we able to move forward with the motion you were kind of coming up with, Damon?
Yeah, I can make a motion, that's fine. So I think attachment A is the resolution we're asked to consider. So I guess I move approval of attachment A, but with a couple of additions or changes. One is that we include, let's see, the following two conditions: that the applicant continue to use inverted U bike racks or other preferred rack styles as described in the land use ordinance for all new bike rack installations and replacements. And number two, that the applicant will apply for an Orange County Community Climate Action Grant to cover the cost of EV charging stations and possibly solar panels. And that just took that language from Susan, so if that's not correct.
Okay, all right, very good. So motion by Damon, second by Susan?
Oh, sorry, Lydia, and to specify that the extension for the permit is for 1 year.
Okay, yeah, and for 1 year extension of the permit. Okay, so motion by Damon, second by Susan? All right. Okay, all right, no further discussion, then all in favor say aye. Damon?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Jackie?
Aye.
And Sammy?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you, Laura, for being here. Appreciate
Very
it.
good.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Laura.
We can consult with Nick and perhaps respond by email about communications.
Yeah, that'd be great, Marty. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Manager, then we're on to other matters.
Mayor, the first item is discussion of the advisory board recruitment and appointment policy and consideration of appointments to the climate action team. The second item is appointment to the Stormwater Advisory Commission.
Okay, we can stop right there, Mr. Manager, for a minute. We'll talk about number one and then we'll head on to the others, if that's okay with you. If that's all right, I appreciate it.
Yes.
Okay, y'all. So I think our main question here is how to move forward with our appointments to the climate action team. And so Sammy asked us to kind of review this conversation we had last June about this matter. I'm happy to pull up the transcript. If folks want to see it, I'd be happy to do that. My review of it seemed to kind of be, it was a conversation around, Sammy did say, after summer, if we don't have any applicants, I'd really like us to go ahead and appoint some so that we can get a quorum so we can move forward. And Barbara kind of said, yeah, I get that. And then so it kind of went back and forth just a little, and there was really no firm resolution of it. I'll be happy to show it to everyone. Okay. And I can do that right now. But I think even more importantly than looking at that together is just kind of talking about, what do we want to do? I mean, we're on the precipice of getting enough to go ahead and at least appoint a quorum, if not the entire board, right? We heard from Susan that we've got a couple of applicants. They're going to fill a couple positions on that climate action team. I know Sammy wants us to get it, and some of this I gathered from just looking at some emails today. I know we want to get this going as soon as we can, but I know we want to follow kind of some of the goals and objectives that we have set out. So let's go ahead and start with Sammy.
Yeah, so Lydia, I think what you just ended there with is our objectives have been set out, and it's represented by both our policy for how we appoint for advisory boards and also the charge for the climate action team. And for both of those, it says, independent of there not being a quorum, we seek a pool of applicants that is diverse. And currently, we meet those requirements. So from my perspective, I think it behooves us to follow our policy and appoint to a quorum. We are still lacking in that the charge requests that we have a high school representative. And so I would request that we hold one seat open for that. And even though we already meet the diversity requirements, I think it would behoove us to hold another open seat, since we got the good news from Susan that there is a potential applicant that can further diversify the pool. So my suggestion and recommendation is that we appoint 7 tonight of a total of 9. We'll have quorum. And my interest in doing this sooner than later, beyond the fact that this is a climate emergency and it's already been 11 months since this charge has been issued, and it's been since 2017 that the recommendation of having an implementation committee was made, is that we are in the midst of a comprehensive planning process. The last time we had a presentation about that comprehensive planning process, we were told that between October 5th and October 20th, advisory boards will have an opportunity to provide input. So if we postpone for a week, that will mean we will appoint next week, and then we will swear applicants in after those appointments the following week, which would bring us right at the verge of October 20th. And, given that the comprehensive plan's 2 major pillars, one of them is climate action, I think it would be a real loss to miss the opportunity for these community members to really provide input. So on that count, but also, engaging with the comprehensive plan in this early stage would be a real good introduction for those members going forward too. So those are my reasons for why I think it would be very important to appoint tonight. I'm glad that this question of diversity is being satisfied, and that we found what I think is a sufficient number of applicants to serve that. I just think that unless staff thinks we can bump the comprehensive planning process for another week and still fit in the input, I would rather us appoint to a quorum tonight.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Sammy. I have a comment I want to make, but I want to hear from others first. So go ahead, Susan.
Yes, thank you for those comments, Sammy. I wanted to just make clear that, everybody knows this, but the applications have not been received. I have spoken, I've had one conversation with an applicant. I've had an email exchange with another applicant. I feel very confident that we will receive applications, but we haven't received them yet. And so I feel like I would like to wait the week until we've received applications. I'll be sending reminders later this week to both of these potential applicants, encouraging them to apply at the latest by Friday morning so that we will have those to review in our packets. But I feel uncomfortable making appointments tonight until we truly do have a diverse applicant pool and we do have a representative from a high school.
All right, thanks, Susan. Comments from other board members. Let's go, Damon.
I don't want to be too redundant, although just to say that I do appreciate where Sammy's coming from, and I appreciate the sense of urgency here and wanting to get this task force, this team appointed. I agree with the urgency there of us doing that. I also, though, would like to get these applications so that we can appoint from a diverse pool. And if that means we can wait till next week, hopefully we'll have these applications in hand. I'd like to hear that. There was some conversation over email between Sammy and the town manager about this issue of timing. And I wonder if we might learn some more about that at some point in this conversation. Thanks.
The issue of timing, specifically as far as the
with regard to what Sammy mentioned, and making sure that the climate action team, once it's formed, has an opportunity to review the preliminary draft of the comprehensive plan.
Of the plan, yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Damon. Appreciate that. Mr. Manager, you want to go ahead and address that? We can't hear you.
I'm on mute. Sorry about that. Our Plan Director, Trish McGuire, is going to address this when she talks about the comprehensive plan. There's some clarification she can provide. That there will be time, if the council wants to wait an extra week, there will be time to allow the climate action team to review the report. And she'll clarify that when she discusses the comp plan as part of the work session.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Richard. Appreciate that. Other council members? Jackie?
I think that since our two main goals of the comprehensive plan are first equity, well, they're equal goals of equity and inclusion and climate change, that to start the process on an uneven foot without adequate representation from the Black community and from other minorities would be starting out. I think it's the wrong foot to start out on. I think, if we're truly about having these two as our primary principles moving forward, that to start the process in an uneven way, I just don't like the precedent that sets. And so I agree. I would like to wait until we get applications, hopefully Friday, but before we move forward. Otherwise, we are starting out one step behind, and I really am not interested in doing that. So thank you for your suggestion, Susan, and for the applicants you were able to encourage.
Okay, I'll just say something really brief, and then I'll go on to whoever else. I think that we should get those applications as soon as possible. It's like tomorrow or Thursday, ASAP, so that they could be in the packet on Friday. So we're not worried about that. Okay. Because I won't be here next Tuesday, but no matter what, I think we ought to commit to appointing next Tuesday. I mean, that would need to be the appointment if that's the will of a majority of this council, which it seems like it is for at least the folks who have spoken. And the other thing is I actually have someone else out there who's considering applying who would add to diversity also. And she's going to make a decision in the next day or so. So there we might even get a little more, but even if not, I would feel comfortable moving forward after we get those applications in. So other comments, let's see. Wait, Mr. Manager, are you done? I just want to make sure your hand's still up. Okay, Sammy?
So, I appreciate, I'm very glad. I would feel a lot more comfortable if staff could actually lay out exactly how the timing could be done, bumped. But, you're a word manager, Mr. Manager, I'll take it. And if there is time to input on comprehensive plan, then that would be great. My concern, and to Lydia's point, is that we must appoint on Tuesday. My concern is that, these applications haven't come in. Suppose they don't materialize. Are we going to remember tonight's meeting? Are we meaning like we're making applications because we currently have diversity per our advisory board recruitment policy? Or is this still contingent upon having Black representation? And all this preface, I totally agree. We should have as much diversity as possible. But what I'm weighing is that worth postponing any participation by the Climate Advisory Board at all? And I know Barbara disagrees.
No, you don't know, Sammy. Is it worth it? Of course it is.
Well,
I'm sorry, Lydia. I'm sorry. Unbelievable that Councilmember Slade even said that. Unbelievable. Is it worth it? Barbara, I'm sorry.
It's worth it. It's worth it because we have gone by 11 months and 4 years of trying to implement a climate action committee. And this within the context of, first and foremost, who's being affected by climate action. When you think of climate justice, it includes future generations. It includes people who don't live in our country. It's as if during COVID, we postponed having what was the group of all our main elected officials meeting because there was no diversity at that time in an emergency. That's the perspective that I'm coming at this with. This is an emergency just as COVID was. And, we didn't postpone the MAC group because it wasn't diverse, because we understood it was an emergency. Unfortunately, in this instance, we have potential applicants. We even have the opportunity to hold open positions and seats for those applicants. So I'm all for it. But I'm also weighing the reality of, we're in a climate emergency, and that's where I'm coming from. Climate is caused by our misunderstanding of each other and treating each other disrespectfully. And that's the last thing I want to come across as being right here. We need to be connected to one another, but we also have to recognize that no action is just as bad.
All right. Thank you, Sammy. All right, let's go. We got Barbara and then Randy, and then maybe we can kind of wrap this one up and try to move forward. So.
Yeah, I'm going to be really short, Lydia, and I do apologize for that outburst because you didn't recognize me. But what Councilmember Slade said was very upsetting to me. To say, is it worth it? It is worth it to me, just as much as climate and environmental justice is worth it. These things are running in tandem. And I refuse to tamper either one of them down. Both of them have to be addressed somehow together. And so, I'm insulted, very much so. And I'm not interested in holding a seat in case these applications don't come to fruition. I hope they do. And thank you, Susan and Lydia, for doing the search and potentially finding some folks. But this seat on the back end is nothing short of tokenism. And seat me on the front end and people that look like me. Bring us along as this is starting off. I have had the same conversation ever since I've been on this council. It has not changed, and it won't change tonight. If there is not Black or African-American applicants, I will not vote to move forward. That's me. The rest of the council may do as they please. There's certainly 6 of you and 1 of me. But I feel like my interest is not represented, unless I see somebody that looks like me. We're underrepresented all the time. And I think we also, for these minutes, we need to answer this question about climate action and the quorum, because I know that there was some concern about, since we haven't seated the climate action team and they've not met, is quorum, is this quorum thing really an issue? And another thing, I got multiple things. I'm gonna be finished in a minute, Mayor LaBelle. When you say it's not Black or brown, it's Black and brown. It's not race or ethnicity, it's race and ethnicity. You bring it all along, because if you don't, you're going to leave somebody out. And I'm one that firmly believes you don't leave anybody behind. And I know it's a climate emergency. Black and brown are going to be impacted.
Did Barbara freeze for you all?
Yes, she's frozen.
Yes. Okay. All right. Let's see. We'll break away from Barbara until she comes back on. Let's go ahead and go to Randy. And if Barbara comes back on, we'll swoop her back in, Randy. So
I'll type it real quick.
Okay. Randy, you can go ahead. Randy, are you okay?
Randy's frozen too.
I think Randy is frozen. Yep.
Wow.
Randy's frozen, and
something going on in that part of town.
And Barb's gone.
And
so
so
it looks
Randy,
like we actually dropped a few people.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we lost.
Have we been hacked?
I was gonna say, I don't think we've been hacked, but
wow, that was weird. It was like a surge at that end of town or something. Or
Randy's back, Sammy's back. We're waiting on Barbara.
Okay.
There she is.
All right.
That's the council.
So Barbara, all 3 of you dropped all at once. You and then Randy and then Sammy, and you were in the middle of I think your last kind of comments. Do you want to finish up?
Where did I end? I mean, I don't know, because I was saying a lot, so I don't know where I left off.
It was about including race and ethnicity.
It was about the end. So
yeah, so I don't do this race or ethnicity. It's race and ethnicity, just like it's Black and brown. You have to bring everybody along together. Otherwise, you're going to leave somebody out. And we can't afford to leave people behind. You know, I think about climate justice, environmental justice, where we're still working on dismantling racism, you know, being diverse, being inclusive. All that is running in tandem. And I just, you know, one is not more important than the other. It just isn't.
Understood. Thank you, Barbara.
So I think that was about where I was, Lydia. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I think Randy was next. And then Randy, I think your hand was up and I was calling on you and you fell out. And then after that, I think we have Damon. So.
No, actually, it froze while Barbara was speaking, at least on my end.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to go through and enumerate the things that Barbara enumerated, but I totally agree with each of those points. I do want to make another comment. I mean, I'm frustrated that we can't get the Climate Action Commission going because that's near and dear to my heart. However, you know, when we were trained for climate reality in Atlanta with Dr. Reverend Barber, William Barber, he made a statement that that framed the entire conference. And Sammy, I know you were there. And he said, there is no climate justice without racial equity and justice. That's the reason why we have to go forth and ensure that there are Black representatives at the table. And we cannot wait to see if we potentially, I mean, we can't appoint people who haven't got an application in, you know. And why does this have to happen this way? Because as John Lewis said, if it's not us, then who? If it's not now, then when? This is the moment where we have to hold to what is critical with race equity, justice, and how we move our own values forth. This is what it looks like. It does mess up the works. It's not bureaucratically easy or clean, but this is the way it has to be. And this is a board, a commission, Sage, that has not been established yet. So when we say that we want to appoint to quorum, you know, well, if the established commission does not exist yet, then you cannot you cannot base it on a quorum for something that is yet to exist. And I don't want to get into whether or not that's clear in the land use ordinance, but it's certainly clear that we do not yet have a formed board that could have a quorum. I also appreciate that Barbara brought up the fact that holding a seat means that we're not advancing our race equity initiatives because we're still letting it sit in the place of the status quo and tokenism. So thank you for that, Barbara.
All right, thanks, Randy. And you made a reference, I think, to the LUO, but I think the policy is in our advisory board guidelines. Our policy.
That's right. That's right. Okay. And I apologize for Sage. There's a cat on the porch.
All right. All right, let's go. Damon and then Sammy.
Yeah, I don't. You know, part of this is that there's this sort of technical difference of opinion, right, about that thing, the quorum issue that Randy just raised. And, you know, it sounds like there's some split about that, but you know, it seems like most people are not interested in appointing tonight. I do want to say that one of the reasons that I think this is especially important with the climate action team is that at least my read of the climate action team's primary goals or purposes is to get at exactly this issue of engagement and racial equity and climate justice. Like, that's the point of the team, is to help the staff organizing engagement activities and to actually think through the equity kind of implications of the implementation of the climate action plan. So it's not as if this is that's one of the things that strikes me about why it's especially important in this case, but important for all of the advisory boards. But it's called out, especially in the charge of this advisory board, that the equity piece is fundamental to the work of the climate action team. And so I kind of feel like, I mean, that's just to let you know, Sammy, that that's part of what's informing my thinking here, and why I think it's so important that we have a diverse applicant pool, as we should for every advisory board, before we make appointments.
Thank you. Thanks, Damon. Sammy?
So, thank you all for your comments. I totally respect everyone, and I'm sorry if I've offended Barbara. I'm very sorry if I've offended you. I'm clumsy, being who I am, and I'm sorry about that. If that's what happened. So, if we're going to postpone, I'm very worried about not moving forward. I totally get it. Like, a diversity is what we want. I'm rooting for it. I've been working for it. If we want to have this charge be different, then let's spell that out. I mean, part of the problem is we didn't define either in our advisory board or in the charge for the climate team what exactly we want. And if we want there to be Black, brown, and whatever other diversity representation, then we should be spelling that out, just as we've spelled it out for youth representative or organizer. Or if we feel like all our advisory boards, that are newly formed have to have diversity, then it would be appropriate for us to spell that out in the policy. Currently, it speaks about advisory boards. Advisory boards are formed when the charge is created. So it's a word that encompasses all advisory boards, including those that have new charges but haven't been had appointments. So if we really want to walk what it seems like the majority is talking about, then let's also address it in our policies, because that's where we get in trouble when it's ad hoc. We apply it for sometimes and we don't for others. And I think the whole purpose and reason for having these policies is so that we're all on the same page and we don't get into situations like we're in right now.
Thanks, Sammy. So my suggestion, folks, is so perhaps we take a look at that part of the advisory guidelines and make it clear if we that we don't want to start a brand new board with at least a quorum. Okay, I think maybe we should make that clear for future boards that we start. As for this particular matter, I think I've heard from a majority of folks that it looks like, we're on for next Tuesday to try to appoint the board with the applications we have, assuming the ones that we've talked about can come in. And then I guess the last thing I wanted to kind of mention was the matter of the minutes, right, from June 22nd. And so, it occurred to me, so I looked back I told you that I watched the video that Sammy asked us to watch. I watched it a few times. I have a transcript of it if we need to go over it. Frankly, it's not entirely clear, but I mean, I want to show you what so these are the minutes that we're kind of looking at. Can y'all see this is the part of the minutes that is in kind of discussion. Well, one thing that occurred to me about including this in the minutes, Sammy, and this is why I would suggest I think we should just take this out, is that it basically, this is what we provide the following comment and direction. This is kind of like what we direct, like we kind of tell staff like what we want to do, kind of, right? And what we want. And so we want, town council wants X, staff should provide X, staff needs to do X. The one thing about this, it's like telling us it's like a direction to us. It seems like different than what we usually put in our directives to staff. And so this is your wording, Sammy, that, we need to recruit for diversity. We've been unable to recruit. We should continue trying, but we need to appoint thereafter, as our policy allows for advisory board appointment when the pool of candidates is not diverse, if there is no quorum. Well, that's kind of the rub. That's what we're trying to figure out, right? Is, do we all agree that that is what it says or not? And we didn't have a long discussion about that night. And when I listened to the transcript, I can see how it can be interpreted a couple of different ways. And so I don't think that's necessarily a definitive, something we definitively even all agreed on that night. It was some comments back and forth between you and Barbara. And then after several other comments, as you noted, a few minutes later, then you said, well, we'll incorporate all these comments into the motion. We all voted for it. So my suggestion is, in approving these minutes, that we go ahead and take out this part in yellow and then go forward with approving them. So I just wanted to put that out there for my thought on how to move forward. Sammy?
So thanks for sharing your perspective on that, Lydia. I appreciate it. I approved the resolution with comments. That was my literal language, and perhaps it's captured in your transcript. What we're just talking about, how we can interpret language in terms of established or non-established board. Comments as expressed or written in that resolution doesn't imply anything other than comments, and we can cut and dice it to mean something else, but the word itself is what it is. And when I made the motion, including the comments, I was hoping, and I thought, and it felt in the moment, and that's why I feel the video is essential, because it really conveys a lot more than what a transcript would, that there was a disagreement with what I was saying. Barbara did object originally, and then she, I don't want to put words in her mouth. That's why the video is so key. But my sense of it was that we were in agreement. A whole summer would be sufficient, and it was really hard to imagine us not being able to make an appointment, and that the council felt that was reasonable, and that there was no objection to my motion of including the comments. Okay, so that's how I see it.
Yeah, let me just show. So I'll just show you. This is the transcript of what was said, and I want folks to just kind of see why I think there's some confusion here. So here we are. This is Sammy up here talking first. I'll just read it. Okay. I want to remind the council I've done best I could. I reached out to the NAACP Youth Council, reached out to El Centro, but the climate team. It's in this whole period over the winter we've been trying to recruit. I encourage us to really recruit for it, so that first thing when we come back in session, we can run with that. And if we don't find diversity, then because our policy says for groups that don't have a quorum, we still will appoint. So this is our chance to really do our work in making that a diverse committee. Barbara, do you want to respond to that? And I said, go ahead, Barbara. And Barbara said, yeah, I'm sorry, Sammy. So, and I remember talking about this, and I understand the urgency. Believe me, I do. But we had just talked about this because this is a new committee, that we should be able to just start out. I mean, we just need to do what we need to do, as far as recruiting folks. Sammy, I agree. I'm just acknowledging we've been trying to do that, and I'm giving us a heads up so that over the summer we actually do that. But if we come back and we still haven't done that, I would request that we appoint. I'm not saying we do it now. I'm saying we do it we do work over the summer. Oh yeah, I know. And hopefully we'll have some people in place. So I kind of take that to mean you were telling us, let's work about it over the summer. But if we come back and we still haven't done that, you're going to request that we appoint. Not that back then we agreed that we would appoint. So I see some ambiguity in what you're saying in the minutes happened versus what actually happened. So I'll leave this up for just a minute here. So if people want to think about that or make some comments about it. I think I see that Damon's hand is up, and then Sammy, I don't know if your hand's still up or if it came back up, but let's go to Damon first because I think his hand was up.
Yeah, I mean, I think I did also watch the video as Sammy asked us to do, and it reflects, this transcript certainly reflects the gist of that, right? Which is that, it is accurate to say that we had a discussion about this question of whether we were going to be ready to appoint after the summer break. But to suggest that we had made some consensus that we were absolutely going to do that, barring the advisory board policy about diversity, a diverse applicant pool, I don't think that does not seem like there was a firm consensus around that. And Sammy, you mentioned that sort of your motion was to include the comments. I mean, a lot of people made comments. Are you suggesting that your motion only was meant to include your comments? And I think it would be accurate to say that we had a discussion on this particular technical question about quorum. I do not think it would be accurate to say that the council agreed we would appoint after the summer break, even if there were no diverse applicant pool.
Thanks. Thank you, Damon. Thanks for that. Sammy.
So, y'all, I apologize for dragging us through this. Reading it, I can see how it is, and it's actually clear to me. So I'm very sorry, and we can take that out.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Sammy. Appreciate that. So, council members, I'd appreciate then a motion to approve those June 22nd minutes with that taken out. Jackie, yes.
Thank you. I think that we need to learn from this going forward, that we do not put comments in minutes unless we're putting everybody's comments in the minutes. That is not, it's not part of the resolution. So, the comments should be only and we've talked about this 10 times before.
Mm-hmm.
There are comments I've made that I wish I could have put in, but that's not how this works. So I hope we learn moving forward that we only put actions, not comments in. So let's learn from this, please.
All right. Thank you, Jackie. And I know we've got Susan and then Barbara, maybe Sammy again, but maybe someone could just, when we're along the way, someone make a motion to approve those June 22nd minutes. Susan, go ahead.
Yes, I'll make the motion to approve the June 22nd minutes. And
just real quick, is there a second? Second by Barbara. Okay, go ahead, Susan.
And Lydia, I'm not sure if this is the time to bring this up or not, so you can just interrupt me and say it's not the time. I was hoping we could set aside even 2 minutes, 3 minutes tonight to talk a little bit about what we do during those times where we are trying to recruit, and we need to be recruiting with the same urgency as the urgency around climate mitigation. What we do during this time, because I don't feel like I use the time very well, and it bothers me that we're delaying appointments at a time where I'm not really doing anything to help solve that problem. And I don't know, I'm just throwing out ideas. Do we need like a Google Doc and we're each putting in names of people we have contacted, or a faith-based leader that we're going to go visit, or a brochure that we're going to be passing out? But I would, at some point, I'd like to have that conversation about how we can use this period more productively to be recruiting, because again, I think we need to approach the recruiting with the same urgency that that we all feel around the urgency of climate mitigation.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. Thanks for that. And I know you sent an email last week kind of brainstorming ideas. I do think it would be a good, every now and then we have that talk about just brainstorming different ways to try to increase our applicant pool. And I know Kathy's always pushing us on that, and others are. So I could talk to Mr. Manager about having some conversation sometime soon, I think. Even as you say, even if it's like 5 minutes, just come up with ideas and throw them out. Because I know there are people like you that would take an idea and run with it if you were given some ideas to think about. So I appreciate that.
And if you do have an opportunity to set up the meeting, if it would be okay, I would love to be able to attend that meeting as well.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about having it on one of our agendas and we can all talk. Yeah.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah, because I started thinking of some ideas when you sent that email out last week that I just wanted to throw out to you and to others. So let's go to Barbara and then Randy.
Yeah, so I appreciated hearing that idea, as there is an urgency for us to continue to do this DEI work here in the town of Carrboro, outside of, things like murals and stuff like that. This is truly a situation where the rubber is meeting the road, and we're either going to rise to the occasion or we're going to look performative. And I think that we don't want to do that. And so as far as the advisory board policy, we're the policy makers. And I want to see that policy look good for the community. It don't need to look good for me. It needs, or Randy or Susan, it needs to look good for the community. And I'm just concerned, that here and there, there's this change, there's and, there's or, there's, the moving around of words to change context and meaning. And what does that actually mean? What is that saying? Because I want the policy to work for the people, for the community. As we try to recruit, folks to come and work on our advisory boards and commissions. I just think that's important. And it seems like almost constant, massaging, moving, for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't try to, I kind of like I'm a stick and stay person. It looked good to me. And I felt like it, it was meeting the need. And so I'm put people with the policy. I mean, really make it work for them.
Thanks, Barbara. Let's go to Randy, and after that, we might call a vote on these minutes.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick friendly amendment to Susan and Barbara that we specify that we're approving the minutes, accepting the minutes with the deletion of lines 259 to 263 and specify.
Well, I think that's kind of understood, but we'll make sure that that's Kathy knows that that's part of the motion, and that the published minutes won't have that. So
right, thanks.
Okay, all right. So let's go ahead and vote on those minutes then. All in favor, say aye. Damon.
Aye.
Randy.
Aye.
Me. Aye. Sammy.
Aye.
Barbara.
Aye.
Susan.
Aye.
Jackie.
Aye.
Okay. And then next week, Mr. Manager, Kathy will have the applications for the climate action team on the agenda. Kathy has her hand up, and then Sammy. Yeah.
Yeah, just for clarification, did y'all settle on, we're talking about the quorum provision in the policy. Did you want to schedule that for a meeting in the future to talk about? Is that what I heard?
Well, here's what I think. I think that it seems to be a majority of us that think we should not, that we should have a diverse poll starting out and not immediately jump to, and not necessarily just appoint just to have a quorum, just to get it going. That's kind of what I think I heard from folks, that we want to go ahead and start out of the gate with those diversity kind of requirements. However, maybe should just put that language on a future agenda, and let's just make sure everyone is clear about that, so we can get that sentence or two clear in the advisory board guidelines for upcoming months. So does that sound good to everyone to just put it on? Okay. I think there's some movement toward clarifying it, Kathy. I was not sure if we had the bandwidth to think through the wording or what it would look like tonight, but I think there is some, just for clarifying that quorum question. So, okay. So this kind of perhaps informs some of these other appointments. Kathy, can you walk us through some of these other appointments that we have? Because I think some of them we maybe are able to move forward with. I know for certain, y'all, the appointments to the Community Safety Task Force, Damon asked that be pulled, and so we're not going to be voting on that one tonight, the appointments to the Community Safety Task Force. But in terms of the other three, Stormwater, OWASA, and Human Services Commission, if you can help us with those, Kathy, that'd be great.
Yeah, so we'll go in order. The Stormwater Advisory Commission, that is just...
Hang on just a minute, Kathy. I'm sorry. Okay. Sammy, do you have a question?
Yeah, Kathy, are you going to be reading results? Because I actually have a comment on the OWASA one before you read any results.
The only one I have results for would be the OWASA.
Could you hold off on reading your results
yeah,
so I can comment? Thank you.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Are we going in order of the agenda? Are we following?
We are. Yeah, we're following the agenda. She started with Stormwater Advisory.
Stormwater Advisory Commission is up next.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There are currently 3 vacant seats, and there's 1 applicant. Gordon Chadwick is the applicant, and I didn't put it on the consent. It was on the agenda last week, and then y'all, I think, wanted to talk about it some more. So it's just on here for you to talk about, but there is 1 applicant. You appointed 2 new applicants in June, and out of those 2, 1 has already resigned. So the appointment of Mr. Chadwick brings it back to where you left it in June and does not fill the 2 seats that you created at the beginning of September. So there would still be 2 vacant seats left for further recruitment.
Okay, so it sounds like this will be putting us back to where we were in June. Actually, back to where we were in June when we added on 2 more extra seats. So let's hear, is there a comment? Let's go to Damon.
I would like to make a motion to appoint Mr. Chadwick to the Stormwater Advisory Commission.
All right, motion by Damon. Is there a second? Second by Randy. All in favor say aye.
Lydia, can I?
I got something to.
Okay, all right. Let's have some comments. We'll go Sammy and then Barbara.
So this right here illustrates, the importance of following through with our policy. I'm all for doing whatever the policy says. And unfortunately, the policy says, we won't be reviewing applicant pools that aren't diverse. And in this instance, we are doing the opposite of that. And so I'm pleading, like, in the same way that we are doing this for the climate action team, let's have some consistency, because I'm going crazy here. I don't know what it is that we're doing. It's very ad hoc. And that's really the heart of what I'm trying to get at. Like, let's be able to nail down. I know language is really boring to clarify, but it's also very important because it's like, it puts us all on the same page. And here tonight, we're considering something that's not diverse as a pool. There's an inconsistency.
I hear you. Okay. I guess my quick response before we go to Barbara is, I thought this was one, I was trying to pull it up. I thought this was one where we were having trouble getting a quorum, and then we lost someone since June who we appointed. And so we were appointing one more person so we could have that quorum of an already formed board. That's kind of how I viewed this one. I might be wrong. Kathy, did your hand go back up, or is that up from earlier? It's up from earlier. Okay, let's go on to
just to clear, Lydia, you're saying that one of the currently appointed people dropped off, so we no longer have quorum. So this would be consistent with.
What I thought. I might be wrong.
That's the case. I'm for it. Okay, good.
Yeah, and I might be wrong. I'm just going through a lot of stuff here. All right, let's go to Barbara and then Jackie.
Yeah, I thought Catherine said, I asked her the quorum question about stormwater, and I think I remember Catherine saying it doesn't have anything to do with quorum.
Okay.
And also there's no diversity in the applicant pool. And so, we got to be consistent about, whatever we're doing. We said this. And so here, there's nothing wrong with Mr. Chadwick. I'm sure that he would serve well, but there's no diversity in the applicant pool. And we have Miss Aja, who's Korean American. She's providing the only bit of diversity there. And so, here we are. And OWASA going to be the same thing. The only reason that I submitted for OWASA is because our representative Yinka is still in place. She's there till June, but she's going to be gone after June. And so we're going to set that's coming.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know how we're going to do this because we're not following what we said. So
thanks, Barbara. Yeah, for some reason, I'll go to Jackie in just a second here. I had this memory that there was a quorum problem with stormwater in June. And so that was one of the reasons we created some extra spaces, but we could barely get by. And then we made an appointment, but then it seemed like the appointment quit. And so that was why I thought we were just kind of resetting ourselves to June. I might be wrong with that. So let's go to Jackie next.
Well, we did get one extra person when we got Aja, because we had appointed Aja and I forget the other gentleman's name. When we appointed them, and then he decided he wanted to be on, I think, greenways instead of stormwater. I'm concerned right now about the Stormwater Advisory Board. I think they're really good, hardworking, brilliant people. I do think that because stormwater management has to impact all communities equally and has to be planned in a way that impacts all communities equally. I'd like to hold off just a little bit on this one. And I'm their liaison, and I'm proud of what they do. I have asked Quentin if we could have a joint meeting between, and he liked the idea, a joint meeting between the between the Affordable Housing Commission and Stormwater to kind of talk through how stormwater management can unintentionally impact affordable housing and how affordable housing, how the two interact. So what I'd like to do is hold off just a little bit and see, I don't know when we're going to be able to pull that meeting together, but to see if we can get some other people on the Stormwater Commission who are being impacted by stormwater issues. Does that make sense? And I'm their liaison. I'm a big fan. I do think they need diversity. They need racial diversity, and they need economic diversity for seeing how people are impacted by stormwater management issues. So I'm hoping that this meeting will be able to start finding some people. Does that make sense? So I'd like to hold just a little bit, even though I'm their advocate and I want them to have a full quorum. And I think Gordon's great. I think we need to find some people who are being impacted in other ways.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. Let's hear from other folks about that or other ideas. Let's go Damon and then Randy, and then I have a comment.
Yeah, so I had been operating under the same assumption as Lydia, and now that I look back at the matrix, it looks like that isn't the issue. The quorum isn't the issue with this board. So I'm happy to withdraw the motion about appointing Mr. Chadwick.
Okay, thanks, Damon. Randy? Can't hear you, Randy.
Yeah. Yes. I was operating under the same assumption, and I'm glad it's been clarified that quorum wasn't the issue. And so I'm glad Damon withdrew the motion, and of course I am withdrawing the second. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Randy. All right. So board members or council members, so we're putting that one off, Kathy. Yes.
Just to shed a little light on how this came forward. The staff liaison for stormwater sent me the note that they'd had one person resign, and there had been, I think, some quorum issues before summer. And so they said, this person is still interested. They've contacted me. I think that maybe Mr. Chadwick still attends some meetings. I'm not sure. So that's how it came forward. The chair and the staff person said, can we take this to be considered?
He does. And I told them, let's, we need people, but we've got to have, we have to have racial diversity on there.
Yeah.
And we also have to have people whose homes may be impacted by any changes that happen with the stormwater ordinance and stormwater management.
Yeah.
So I just want to hold back just a little bit and see if we can find some people. I have an idea of some people to ask.
Okay, so we're holding off on the Stormwater Advisory Commission. Let's talk about OWASA, and I think Sammy wanted to say something before we went into that. Kathy, are you okay? Your hand's still up? You good?
Yeah, same issue. OWASA board, I know we only appoint 2, but the makeup is there's only one Black person on the council. Currently, our advisory boards represent, between Asian and Latinos, half of the population. So there's a real big problem in appointing anyone at this time, given what the applicant pool is and how discongruent it is from our policy.
Okay. I'd like any response to that. I don't, when I was kind of thinking about this, I was thinking about our 2 appointees, right? And we, as Barbara said, we have Yinka. And so I was okay appointing someone different to someone out of this poll to that, but I'd like to hear from others about that. Susan?
Yeah. So Lydia, I was remembering an email we had gotten from you, and I thought it was at some point over the summer indicating that we actually really needed to, there had been pressure being put on us that we really needed to make this appointment.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know if that pressure was because of quorum or another reason, but do you recollect this?
Yeah, let me look, because you're right. It was actually a letter from, I think, the OWASA board to us. Yeah, it was from, I'm so sorry. Okay, it was from the chair of the board of directors regarding our vacant positions. We know you want to have a diverse set of skills, experiences, age, yada, yada. Let's see. It really just is kind of talking about how it's really critical. They have a full board. They've got a lot going on. They got a lot of committees. They got a lot of work. I mean, they work a lot. Barbara knows she used to be on that, but that's really what it was, just telling us, urging us to go ahead and try to, appoint as soon as possible because they're down one member because of us not appointing. Bob's term expired on June 30th. So
okay, and so they're still able to meet quorum. It sounds
they're able to meet quorum. Yeah, but they do a lot of stuff too. So
yeah, understood.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to Barbara here.
No, I was just looking at the current board demographic, and so they do have 8, and so they're down 1, so the quorum is not an issue. But I mean, they do a lot of work. I remember that. But they have 8 out of 9 seated.
Sorry, I have my hand raised again.
Kathy.
The clerk emailed me today, and I did not forward this, and my apologies. They are actually down another member, so they have 7 total. So there's 7 of 9. So just as a FYI.
And the 7 of 9, we're one of the 2 that's vacant, right?
That's right.
Right. And who's the other one that's vacant? Do you know?
That I don't know. I can. She said, just an FYI, the board makeup changed and we only have 7 board members. Updated below. Age 5 or over 55. Race and ethnicity 6 Caucasian, 1 African American. Gender 2 females and 5 males.
2 females, 5 males. And also, I'm interested though. So you don't know who has the opening, right? Because
I don't.
I mean, that's the other thing is y'all. Maybe we recruit more broadly too. I mean, some of those are seats appointed by the county or by Chapel Hill. They got a lot larger group than us too. I mean, that's a really wide group of folks to be able to recruit from for OWASA too. So. All right. Am I hearing that we don't want to appoint to OWASA right now either?
Could I just raise one more thing?
Yes.
Just so that we've considered it. I'm fine not appointing right now, but I just wanted to raise the concern that this does mean that we continue to be underrepresented. Carrboro continues to be underrepresented on OWASA, and so it. Just like we're trying to bring urgency to all of the other appointments, this would be an important one to try to diversify our pool. So yes. I'm just raising that.
Thank you, Susan. And Mr. Manager, I know I mentioned earlier, we need to have a discussion soon about all of us, a real action plan involving all of us getting out there and trying to find folks to apply for these boards. Let's really talk about having that sooner than later, because it's obviously going to be affecting a lot of these boards, it seems like, continuing to affect them, I should say. So, all right, how about human services? What's our situation with that, Kathy?
Human services is in a quorum, what I would call, the definition of quorum emergency. They are having to cancel meetings and work is not being done. There are actually 4 vacancies. There is a 3rd applicant that has been attending meetings. I didn't include her application because I did not get the chair form, but I've talked with staff. She has been reviewed. There was just the chair thought, or the vice chair thought that she had submitted the form, but it is not there. Her name is Erlene Birch. She has been on some committees before, but she is attending. It would not add any racial diversity though. That's the applicant pool. I think it's 3 white females at this point.
Okay, so right now we have 4 members and we have 4 vacancies. That's what it shows on the
and forum. 4 is forum. 4 is their quorum number, so their minimum. So if anyone can't make it for any reason, then they have to cancel the meeting, and they're running into that.
So in terms of quorum, we might consider appointing one of the applicants, council members, to help with the quorum issue, right? So Susan, I see your hand up and I see Sammy's hand up. So it sounds like maybe Susan, maybe you had yours up by accident. So let's go to Sammy.
Yeah, so I'm all for appointing one more. I would ask though that we align and change when we revisit our appointment policy so that we say, quorum +1 or whatever it is. There has to be consistency. Like, according to our policy, we shouldn't be looking at this because technically there is quorum, but in reality, it's not sufficient for the group to meet.
I'm trying to figure out how 4 is quorum of 8.
Yeah, I'm surprised too. I thought it was 50 + 1, but I'm going with what Kathy
Yeah,
said.
I thought it should be.
You're looking at the matrix.
Yeah.
So my roster has been incorrect for who knows how many years, but it is a full committee of 7. So don't look at, so I may have misspoke. There's 3 vacant seats right now.
Okay.
And 1 expired term, Janet Archer, and she's asked to be reappointed. So there's 4 total.
Okay, so
with
she's
Janet.
one of the 4 of the 7. So
That's right.
So she's one of the 4 of the 7. And so when hers expires, then we only have 3 of the 7. So we don't have a quorum.
Right. Well, her term has expired. She's just continuing.
Okay.
To serve.
So right now, y'all, we have 3 of 7.
In that case, I'll make a motion to appoint all 3.
To appoint all 3?
Yes, because we don't have a quorum once her term expires.
Yeah, I mean, we could appoint 1 and we'd have a quorum, but.
So, I mean, why would we wait? I mean, we have diversity. We're following our policy. I don't understand.
Okay. All right. Motion by Sammy to appoint all 3. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Barbara. Is there any further discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye. Damon?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Sammy?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
And Susan?
Aye.
Okay. All right. So, so we made those appointments. I was just this is like a really crazy just idea I want to throw out before we go on the next item. Y'all, we keep creating more and more boards, and the boards are pretty big, at some point someone might want to look at all the boards we have and maybe considering backing up the numbers on some of them, because it's so hard to fill all of them. For a little small town, we have so many boards that have so many members, many more boards than we had back when I, first joined the council. So that might be a thought also at some point to just evaluate the numbers we have on each of these boards as well. So, okay, Mr. Manager, head on to the next item.
Okay, the next item is a work session on the preliminary draft of the Carrboro Connects Comprehensive Plan. This is to provide council with time to review and discuss preliminary draft. And Trish McGuire, our plan director, will make a few comments.
Trish coming over, Kathy? Can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm laughing to myself because do you remember 2 weeks ago when we had the problem with bringing Trish over?
Yeah, is the problem Trish?
It seems to be doing it again. I mean, I am.
Well, you want to?
Okay, here we go. I think she came over.
All right.
16th time's the charm.
This is like Star Trek, beaming people in.
Yeah, it is. It's all Trish's fault. Oh, there's Trish.
I knew that was coming.
Right. It only happens to you.
And my apologies. So thank you all so much for your time this evening. It's wonderful always to hear how deeply you consider the interests of the community. So first, I wanted to just appreciate the time and support for this particular project from you, and then mention. And is Scott in this group yet? Because we were going to bring him over as well. I'll start off by asking you to join me in welcoming Heidi Persaud to the meeting this evening. She is I can't tell you, Heidi has a long title, so if you want her to explain for you, she's a wonderful planner and with the Center for Neighborhood Technology, the firm that helped us with the Rain Ready project, but also a sub-consultant on this effort for the comprehensive plan. And Heidi specifically is the lead on the environment, climate action, transportation and infrastructure sections of the topics in the plan. And then I also, of course, want to ask you to join me in welcoming back Scott. He's been here before, but and he, of course, is with Tesca, the project lead for this comprehensive planning effort with us. Our plan for tonight is just for me to run through a few slides for you and then set the stage for your discussion and feedback on the preliminary draft plan we have out right now. And the three of us are here as resources to assist you in the work session if we can be helpful in any way. I really need to just take a breath, and I hope you probably, I suspect most of you do too. Just a little relaxation moment. Just reflecting on our progress to this point, which, it really is an immense task. And, hindsight is 2020. So, even though I knew what a comprehensive plan was, being in one has been, and especially during this particular time, but has been a pretty immense task. So join you I really appreciate your support and your leadership in wanting to do that. Tonight, we want to have this work session so you can give us feedback on this preliminary draft, incorporate into it things that you think that still need to be there, so that this the public hearing draft that we have November 16th reflects as much, builds as much to this point as we can of the input we've received, the participation we have been enjoying. So I've got a few slides to show you, and I will pull those up right now. And I missed the first two slides. My apologies. Can you see that screen, everyone?
Yes, we can see it.
Wonderful. Okay. Oops. So there's Heidi and Scott, and here we are tonight. Our plan for our meeting is to kind of go through those introductions. I'll do an outline of the plan elements, provide information on the review schedule as we see it right now. We have those discussion questions queued up from the agenda item, and then a chance for you all to talk and give us feedback. So hopefully that sounds like an okay way to proceed. The draft plan, I do expect that, so the draft plan that you have received has 10 chapters and an appendix. The introduction and community engagement parts of the plan are capturing the look and feel we are working towards for the final document. You'll note in the beginning of the plan, of course, we have a title page, and we've got the names of you all, the task force, the managers who've worked on this, the staff. We will be adding the names of all the community members who've participated in this effort too. We'll want to be sure that their roles in this plan development are documented as well as everyone who we can name being part of this effort for the community. So you'll see that we do have, as I said, 10 chapters and an appendix, and we have pretty much 9 of the chapters in the document that you've had access to. And we'll be adding for the November 16th plan, public hearing and the implementation component. And then I'm not sure we'll have all the appendices in there at this point. I can't see Scott at the moment, but he can thumbs up or nod or explain on that point if it's of interest to you guys this evening. As far as the schedule goes, we were just here a couple of weeks ago, and that week when we did the meeting with you, a community open house, the task force meeting number 7, when they did the preliminary draft review and really the initial round of prioritization. And I'll talk about that more in just a few minutes. And then we have, this evening, town council work session and advisory boards review. We have many meetings scheduled throughout this month. And to speak to the question Councilmember Slade had earlier, we did not anticipate the climate action team would be, appointed or ready to, just based on what's been happening this over the past several months. Of course, the EAB has participated and done the climate action review of the document. They've been in, as all the other advisory boards have done. They did a review back in May. We sent the document to the task force for their preliminary review in August. So the EAB representatives there have participated. And of course, Tim Turner was one of the co-chairs, but he has stepped down from that role. And we are, of course, doing advisory board reviews this week. So the EAB will be looking again this week at this preliminary draft. We have added I've got underlined on this slide the two things that we've changed from our meeting with you before and earlier late in September. And really the review session with the task force, we have identified November 11th as a date for that. And that's really the purpose so that the task force has a chance to come up with kind of a consensus recommendation for you to consider at the public hearing. And then I should have put that down below. Sorry on this, it's out of order. Getting myself out of order.
Trish, I'm so sorry. Can you stop for just a minute?
Sure.
Sammy, do you want to speak now or you want to?
Yeah, just in reference to the question, Trish, I understand the EAB. I mean, I'm the liaison along with Randy. Like, I know the EAB's worked on this. The question is whether the climate action team will have an opportunity to review this, assuming that there's an appointment and next week and swearing in the following week would put us to October 20th. And so the town manager, when this question came up, assured me that that would be possible. Are you saying that is possible or not?
Well, if I could, I was going to get down to that when I got to the November 16th item, actually. But yes, I'm not sure we've stated all the elements of this step, but the public hearing draft will be referred back to all the advisory boards. So one of the actions we'll ask you to do that night is to refer the public hearing draft back to the advisory boards for recommendations. So what we're asking the advisory boards to do right now, and I know this seems like kind of an iterative process and multiple rounds, but we're trying to do that so we really have people take a look deeply at it and we can adjust things as we're going to get that draft for the public hearing. But we will be asking them after that public hearing, asking you to refer it to them for recommendations. And so the climate action team will absolutely, I think if you act next week, will be in a position to be able to do that. And they can make recommend edits as well from the schedule that we have. That seems the most likely plan, which would involve them. And I think it's what we're thinking is that the advisory boards will receive that public hearing draft, all of them, and that they will have their later meetings in November, if any of them have them, which I don't think they will, actually looking at the calendar, but December and then January. So there'll be time for them to do that before we bring it back to you.
It looks like Sammy has a follow-up and then Randy.
So Trish, thank you. So you're saying that in this current iteration of reviews in October, they won't have the opportunity, but November 16th, they will.
Well, I mean, I'm just practically speaking, if they're not appointed until next week, even if they were appointed this week, we would have to communicate with them, find out availability. We haven't picked a meeting night for them. We have to find a space for doing that when the staff is able to, it doesn't conflict with another meeting.
Thank you. So I just want to.
So I'm just realistically speaking to the fact.
I totally appreciate that. And this is, I need to make this point because when I'm asking a question about the feasibility of something and it impacts a conversation that we're having before, I would have going forward not like to postpone for a later item because the answer from the manager was one thing, the response from staff is another thing, and it really bothers me that I assumed what I was both asking over email and during the meeting was being agreed to, and now it turns out it's not.
Well, I mean, it is up to the whole council, and it may have been a misunderstanding. I mean, I have this whole schedule, in my head, and I don't think our manager doesn't have that depth of it of perspective right this moment. We tried to communicate clearly about it, but I will say that if it wasn't a clear communication to him about, I'll certainly take responsibility for that. There just are two different kind of things happening in a relatively short time frame, and so I may have made them seem closer in time than they actually, than they are, but they're still relatively close. So I mean, the climate action team, if it is formed next week, will be one of the advisory boards that y'all can refer this document to, and they can have as much input as you need them to have. I guess that was what I was thinking when I was talking about the schedule earlier today. Does that help with your?
No, I mean, maybe Trish, my email didn't come through. I was very specific about the dates per the last presentation. October 4th through October 20th was the window in question, and maybe you didn't receive that slide. But it's just very frustrating that I assumed that was the response was in reference to that question. So I mean, we'll just leave it there. But it's just a lesson for me. I'm not going to trust. Getting an answer later. It's like needs to happen sooner. Thank you.
Let's go to Randy.
Yeah, I don't know if this question should be asked now or later, but in the agenda packet, I had a question about the 5-year priorities. And so just tell me, Trish, should I hold on to this question or ask it now? Because I know you're talking about schedule right now.
Well, I think we will go. I will go through that and have some notes about that. What the task force did. That would be
okay. Then I'll wait. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That sounds great. Thank you. So we will be working to take those comments, and some of the advisory boards are really going to be down to the wire, and beyond that, we'll be working hard in late October and early November to get this revised draft ready for you. We have identified that date because you don't have a meeting in December this year. We wanted to be able to present the draft before the end of the year as a public hearing, but again, expect that it will continue into the next year so that we have time for various types of community input and adjustments as you feel need to occur. And then again, looking towards, we're thinking March would be the time when you would have a couple more iterations of this plan to work towards adoption. So on the screen are the questions, kind of framing questions we included in the agenda item. They're just here there's this shot is here for you. And then I've got, you will remember that in the agenda abstract, there was a C attachment A under number 2. Those were the preliminary priority projects that were identified in the task force meeting on the 23rd. And this is just a PDF or a JPEG of those pages that are attachment A2. I wanted to just sort of again frame that the exercise or the work we asked the task force to do that evening were to pick their top 5 items in each breakout session, and to use the framing questions that you can see up in the upper left-hand part of the screen here, and I'll just read them. Which strategies and/or projects will best advance race and equity and climate action? Which strategies and/or projects are most likely to have the greatest community impact to best meet the plan's goals over the next 5 years? And then how will these projects expand access to places, resources, and programming? So we did ask the groups to use a process where they were trying to pick 5 items that would be their priorities for the first 5 years, knowing that we expect the plan to have an update schedule, and we do want to be able to kind of put things into chunks of activities that we feel can move forward. None of the task force members present that evening selected the climate and the environment breakout sessions. We did note in this summary, all of the items with asterisks are those items that are climate related actions. And I think Scott mentioned this when we came before you a couple of weeks ago, but there were a number of these strategies or projects actually can be repeated in several different topical areas. They have overlap, and that was certainly one of the topics of our conversation, was the interconnectedness of activities. And so there are a number of things that were identified in the breakout groups we had, but none of those members stepped into the climate and environment breakout session. We do expect we're going to do some specific additional outreach on this question, both with the task force and and the EAB as well. And if the climate action team is in place, we will certainly be happy to check in with them as well, as is most helpful to you. I'm sorry, question?
Yeah, I have
do you have any more slides, Trish?
I've got the slides here that are available for you to, if I need to flip through them, that are broken down by each of the topics: affordable housing, transportation, the economic sustainability, recreation, parks and cultural resources, land use, and then public services. Both of the affordable housing and the economic sustainability breakout groups both added some extra priorities in addition to their five top priorities. So those are noted here on these slides. And then I've just got this last slide repeated, which has the questions for you. And happy to answer any other questions or help as we can. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. So it looks like maybe we have some questions or we might be starting into some conversation, but let's go ahead and go Barbara and then Randy.
Yeah, I just had a question about the naturally occurring affordable housing. I know you mentioned mobile home parks and manufactured homes, but certainly there are more than that within our community. So were they just used as examples, or is that all we're looking at when we think about NOAA?
I think those are an example. It's not intended to exclude other types.
Oh, okay. Because I know we have multiple types of. Was wondering if we're gonna get that comprehensive list or location for our naturally occurring affordable housing. I didn't know if that was coming up. I think I've been asking Rebecca about it, but I'm just mentioning that as something that might be helpful.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks, Barbara. Let's go to Randy.
Yeah, well, you alluded to the question that I was going to raise regarding the breakout session for climate and ecosystems and the environment. In working with staff, why do you think that that area was not chosen? And should we? I mean, and this is important because here we are with a really beautiful community climate action plan that should be informing so much of what is written in the preliminary draft review and even referenced. And I don't feel it. I don't see evidence, and it's counterintuitive to me that. The folks who are representing the community to talk about comprehensive planning and meeting goals are missing one of the top two interwoven aims of the comprehensive plan. One, of course, being race equity, and the second being climate action and climate response. So, what is community telling us by not making that choice? I'm shocked, actually. Sammy, what do you think? I mean, we're in a situation where people are always talking about climate, and here we have it was not chosen as a breakout, nor is it really referenced in anything in terms of the overarching plan that we have in place.
All right, so Randy, let's hear. I think maybe Scott's going to respond to that, and then also whenever you're done talking, I know Susan's next. So let's go to Scott.
I don't know the exact reason for that. I do think if you look through the plan, and would look forward to your comments, that hopefully you see that it does infuse every aspect of the plan. It's right in the introduction, along with race and equity throughout the plan. When we design the plan, there's going to be better iconography and ways to show the different issues as how they go through the plan. I can't speak on behalf of we let people choose which sections there was limited time. And I think generally throughout the process, people tended to choose areas that needed, frankly, more work because they didn't have recent plans. That was my interpretation of it, because the plan was so well done and so recent that people felt that that was in good shape and they wanted to participate in another session, Parks and Recs, that's been, that doesn't have a plan and things like that. So that was my interpretation of that choice. It was just one evening and we talked about it immediately. And as Trish said, we definitely want to go back and get more input on that area.
I have one other part of my question, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Randy.
I also was concerned that on the section in the preliminary under economic sustainability, that there wasn't a very specific line that represents non-traditional entrepreneurial enterprises, because that's an important crossover for Black, Brown, BIPOC businesses and non-traditional businesses. And I know that that's something that has been discussed. And I was just wondering, should this not reflect that in some way? I mean, it says attract new businesses, but it just doesn't spell out that one of our objectives is to build non-traditional entrepreneurial opportunities and to create, opportunities and wealth generation. I'm just wondering why that might not be there.
Or expressing that we want it there, that it should
exactly.
be. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, thanks, Randy. So we've got Susan and then Sammy and then Barbara.
Yes, thank you, Trish and Scott, for all of your work on this. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel here. So hang in there. I had just two questions. One is in the criteria, there wasn't any mention of the price tag. And I'm just curious, one question is, in the setting of the priorities, how will the cost of the different programs be factored in? And the other question I have is that I didn't see any mention of stormwater with any of the breakout groups, which surprised me a little bit. And I haven't read the plan, but I'm just curious if stormwater has been given the the weight it deserves in terms of the feedback you've gotten from the task force. Thanks.
Heidi or Scott, do you want to start? I mean, I think we actually have I guess climate and the environment, the stormwater piece was really under that umbrella, I believe. And so with similar to Scott's thinking, I mean, we really can't analyze why. I think people chose what they felt they needed to participate in the meeting. So, but if we can certainly, as part of that, going back, I think all of the topics we were going to do in that breakout session, we will be looking for more help with prioritizing the strategies and projects that have been identified. Did you want to add anything, Heidi?
Yeah. I was just going to mention, you haven't had a chance to read it, but if you look at the transportation chapter, it's transportation, green infrastructure, energy, and water. It alludes to a lot of the stormwater recommendations. And then you may also find some under the environment, climate change chapter as well. But it's definitely integrated in there with green infrastructure when we talk about improving roadways, sidewalks, and making sure that we're looking at green infrastructure improvements for stormwater management. So it's definitely in there. And Randy, I do just want to touch back very quickly. One of the priorities that came out of the transportation breakout at the task force meeting was around climate change. And goal 3 was highlighted as a priority, which was around greenhouse gas emissions, which was a direct goal that was taken from the climate action plan to reduce it by 80%. So that was definitely identified at that last meeting. And I'll just agree with Scott. I was in the environment breakout group waiting to take notes. And, we waited like 10 minutes, and when no one showed up, we just kind of went off into their groups. But I can't say enough that we've definitely been hearing a lot of feedback regarding stormwater management and climate change within this transportation infrastructure chapter, which is so heavy, by the way. So sorry about that. You may think it's only transportation because it starts so long and strong, but there's 3 other sections that follow. And that's where you'll see a lot of water.
Right. Thank you, Heidi. That's really helpful.
Can I just ask that, embedding water with transportation, it would be really, I just think when folks want to hear about climate and want to hear about ecosystem protection and preservation, they want the components of a healthy environment to stand either under climate or ecosystem. They really don't want it embedded with transportation. I mean, just think about the folks in Flint, Michigan. If water quality and is embedded in something else, we diminish its importance to our life. And I'm just saying that because I understand when we're doing these breakout sessions, how folks, when they want to share and this is a very big operation that you have going on. But when you take the information and you need to filter it, so it's going to come back to community at large, that's the place where it needs to show that all the values that the community hold are being recognized and that they're not embedded in something else, and that they do not have legs to stand on their own.
Thanks, Randy. Sammy, I had you next. Are you still going to speak? Okay. All right. Then we go on now to Barbara, and then Damon. All right. So Barbara looked like she stepped away. Wait, there she is. Barbara, are you eating or something? I can't hear you.
Yeah, I moved away. I'm sorry. So mine is just 2. I don't know if they're questions. Well, I guess kind of they are. And it was the first question is spurred by something I heard, Catherine Frey ask. She is really focused on the how, as far as, how we hope to get, to some of these items here. I can see some of it, but not all of it. And are we realizing the synergy amidst all of this? And do you feel like, and I'm just asking the consultants and staff, we feel like we're hitting the mark with how, and also the synergy that obviously exists between some of these items? Because climate justice, I mean, that's linked to everything. I mean, you know what I mean? And so are we hitting the mark, with that?
I think in terms of, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Trish. I was like, I see nodding heads, but go ahead and talk. So
I think so. I think so. But, we are asking for for our task force members, for the advisory board members to check what we've heard so far and to see if we think it is clear enough. We've tried to provide, this is 190 some pages, 196 pages long. And what I think Scott mentioned, and I tried to say today, is we did actually, there was a lot of duplication to this point, and we actually we chose to put some things in certain places. And hearing your feedback tonight, I think we'll go back and check ourselves on the way we've done that and make sure that we're catching what we hear you say, in terms of the topics that are of interest to you that you're highlighting and emphasizing. And the process of creating the implementation plan, I didn't actually do a count yet on the numbers of strategies and projects, but it will be there are many, and that list will be extensive. And to address Susan's point, we aren't able to do cost estimates for those, of course, in this project, but we will be looking at sort of what are the easier lifts and what are the harder lifts, and what does it look like to accomplish some things within shorter time frames and longer time frames. And so I'm going to stop there and just see if Scott or Heidi have a point to add to that. Is that helpful to you, to both of you, all three of you, actually, your most recent question?
Yeah, I think it is, but I just want to make sure that we're staying close to our pillars, race and equity, the climate justice, and the expansion of access, particularly the first two, because those two can be intertwined everywhere, all the time. So yes. Thanks for your response.
The only thing I would add, I completely agree with what Trish said. One real benefit was that similar ideas bubbled up across all the issue areas. So there was a draft over the summer that Trish was just alluding to, that we had, and all the task force members had a chance to review, and really noted all of the overlap. The plan would have been 50% longer with all that overlap. So instead, at the beginning of every chapter, there is a discussion for that chapter of how that chapter relates to climate action and race and equity. And then at the end of the chapter, there's a list of related projects. So we're really tried to eliminate the duplication, but try to make it to be able to find the things you're looking for. And so it's really helpful tonight to say, that stormwater was hard to find. So we need to work on that. So we appreciate the feedback.
All right, great. Thank you, Barbara, for that. Let's go to Damon, and then we'll go Jackie after Damon.
Thank you, Trish and Scott and Heidi, for being here again today with us to talk us through this. I appreciate the opportunity to offer some more feedback and actually ask some questions. But I think on this topic of, as Barbara called it, synergy, which we've talked about before, Sammy talked often about this importance of finding synergies among our various goals. I think that's really important. And I'm really fascinated hearing the discussion so far, because to me, when I see the draft plan, that's what I see most of. It is the fact that there is so much overlap, which is why I guess I don't find myself getting too worried, for example, about this point of whether, a task force member attended one of the breakout sessions about climate change. When you look at the transportation section and the land use section and the housing section, the priorities identified by the task force are many of them about climate change, right? They're about transportation system that reduces greenhouse gas emissions and that makes it easier for people to get around without getting into a car, right? It's about land use policies that are about, walkability and bikeability and transit orientation and so on. So that meshing together of all of those priorities is what strikes me as really important about this plan, and it inherently is identifying those synergies that others mentioned. So anyway, good work on that. But I do think as you're hearing some feedback here about, I had trouble finding this topic, I think that's really important, right? Because we know, for example, that folks, that infrastructure chapter that you identified, which covers stormwater infrastructure, green infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, like all the infrastructure, maybe it's worth taking a look at that, as kind of Randy hinted at, saying, let's tease a little bit of that out if we know there are specific priorities in place. I wanted to ask a question about, so Trish, you very helpfully provided us with a list of prompts, which I dutifully, being the person I am, read and had some thoughts about. And one of the thoughts I had was the prompt about, well, first of all, about the priorities. I loved reading through the task force priorities. I think they're spot on and really headed in the right direction. Maybe I'm biased because I share many of those priorities myself, but just say I thought it was great to read through them and to see a lot of that overlap that you talked about, and to see a lot of community feedback we'd heard in a lot of these sessions over the past year being reflected in those priorities that the task force members were identifying. Another prompt in the list, though, is number 3, which is who are the partners who could help us realize some of this stuff that we're at some point we're going to have an implementation chapter, right? And that's going to help us figure out, that's going to help lay out for us the plan, the actions that we can take to achieve the goals laid out in those priorities the task force has identified and the council presumably will adopt at some point. I didn't know how to answer that question, though. who are the partners to, I'm wondering what you had in mind asking that question, and maybe I just need more prompting in terms of how to think about that question. Who are the partners that could help us get there? And maybe it sort of just depends on the priority, right? Maybe it depends on the specific topic. But I'd appreciate some more thinking from you about that prompt. And then finally, in prompt number 4, you asked whether there were constituencies that needed to be consulted further and so on. I think in your last time before us about the draft plan, I raised all the example of the great engagement that had been done, working through the Refugee Community Partnership, for example, working through El Centro to identify communities within Carrboro who have access issues today, but we knew needed to be included in an intentional way in developing priorities and thinking about vision and goals. And I brought up the idea of, has there been some effort, or will there be some effort in this coming several months to circle back to those communities who participated in these original rounds of discussion and make sure that they feel like what they brought to the table last time is reflected in this draft. So I just wanted to raise that point again. And that's it. Thanks.
Sorry, it took me a while to find my mouse. Trish, did you want to respond to Damon's question about that prompt before we go to Jackie and then Sammy? Just about
I think the priority, the partners, it really is specific to the types of initiatives. But if there is a hidden group that you know of that we don't, we would certainly want to know an idea you may have about a particular project that you think may be especially suitable. I think, we have an idea of many of those groups, but we don't have all of the connections that you have.
Yeah.
So I would just
like community groups who are working in some of these areas that are being identified as priorities and making
absolutely
sure know about them and they can be pulled into the conversation. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. That's good, Trish. All right, let's see. We had Jackie next and then Sammy.
I don't want to repeat what other people have said because I've agreed with it. It is a very thick and complicated document, which is good because you had all these people working many, many months to put it together. I was just wondering if some kind of index, because when we're looking at different topics, when I take out a cookbook, like a real book that you open, not the screen, in the back of it, there's an index that I can look at by ingredients. I can look for eggs or chocolate or something. And I wonder, I don't know how hard it would be, or maybe if this would be possible to do it, that there's a computer program that could help you do it. So that if you're looking for stormwater, or you're looking for you're looking for second languages, that you could find in the index where those are referenced. Is that impossible to do? Would that be too much? Because it might make it easier when we're working with specific topics.
I mean, our expectation is, and I'm not an InDesign expert, and so, but there will be a way to connect, to cross-reference. I don't know what that, I mean, Scott, can you explain how that looks in the plans you've done? I've glanced at them, but I really don't know the nuts and bolts of it. So
it's really different for every plan. So there is quite a bit of overlap. We started with this at the end of every chapter, referring to it, and we frankly haven't figured that out yet. There will be a matrix. The implementation plan will include 2 parts. One, a narrative sort of focused on the priorities and the steps and who needs to be involved to make that happen and what types of resources would need to be raised for those priorities. There will also be a table that will list every single project in the plan. Beyond that, I think the idea of an index is intriguing. We'll look into that, but we completely agree that people don't tend to read a plan from the beginning to the end. They're looking for something. And so we promise to make that as easy as possible to find what you're looking for. I don't know exactly how we'll do it. We know we'll do it partly through design, as Trish said, through colors and icons, and we'll look into some idea of an index or something like that to make it as easy as possible to find what you're looking for.
I know it's a huge job and it's a good problem to have. It means that we have so much information and we have so many recommendations that it's hard to plow through them. But that's better than having 3, right? So it's a good problem to have.
And I'll add, you're spot on that. It's dense, but I think that kind of goes back to how we wrote these chapters from the start. The idea was to make sure that we were sort of taking this more comprehensive approach with all of our individual topics and ensuring that we were weaving in topics of race and ethnicity and climate throughout, so that it's explicitly stated, not just in the intro, but in the goals and the projects. So if say we did an index and you search the word language, as you mentioned, you would see it pop up in transportation when discussing wayfinding. Since that was feedback we received from one of our original outreach events with, I think it was the Spanish speaking community in Carrboro, where they said, well, I can't read the signs. And so one of the suggestions within the transportation chapter under wayfinding is, we need to consider having information in different languages. So it's because you're not going to just find one section in this plan where it's like, this is the only time we mention race and ethnicity in a very neat and proper way. It's just infused throughout. So I think that's a little bit of the difficulty as well in reading through it or trying to find things really quickly, but it's also been done purposefully, so that you can see exactly how it is that these topics are being highlighted and how we're trying to prioritize them within the text. InDesign also, I think once you convert it into a PDF, sometimes you could just click on something and it'll just guide you every time you're looking for something, or Control F. I mean, there's different ways that we can probably play with PDF, and if we make it a virtual online plan, there should be some neat ways that I'm sure Erin at Tesca could.
With that, we want this plan to be accessible to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage us to keep the level of technical skills that may be something you do in your sleep, but maybe other people, it makes their head explode.
Yes.
I don't want this to be technologically inaccessible.
Definitely agree.
I think there's room in the world for paper as long as it's recyclable. There's room in the world for paper.
Very true.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jackie. We'll go to Sammy, and then I'll make a few brief comments.
Yes, thank you all for all your work on this. It's really an impressive document, and I guess as some have already mentioned, one of the challenges will be how useful it will be in terms of access and design facilitating that access. So I think that's kind of the gist of one of the big questions we have in terms of how we're going to use it. I appreciate the prioritization and the prompts y'all gave, the task force, to really find synergy and things that are convergent both in climate terms and race equity. One of the things about climate change is that we have a very clear defined goal over the next 10 years to reduce our emissions by 80% below 2010 levels. So, the prioritization in terms of that goal, it will be helpful in that, some things cross over other things, but our goal is to reduce emissions. So at some point, we as a town will be looking at all opportunities to reduce our emissions. So just as a caveat for what it means over the next 5 years, well, we have this bigger goal that encompasses so much more too. One of the items that maybe I think didn't get reflected as much in the comprehensive plan, and perhaps didn't float to the top as people were identifying ones that they felt were synergetic, is a living experience one having to do with the Orange County Home Preservation Coalition, which have done an exceptional job at facilitating home repairs that have then allowed them to have access to the Weatherization Assistance Program for weatherizing homes. So state funds that in the past, many of these, our quota in our county kept getting deferred because there was this prerequisite home repair. But this entity and coalition's really done a fantastic job so that for the first time this year, there have been no home deferrals. So to whatever extent possible, I'd like to offer that as an opportunity to include, because it really crosses all these goals that we have. And the opportunity there also has to do with ramping up the funding so that we augment the work that the weatherization assistance program local providers can do, because they're meeting their quota. And so that we need to augment that with local dollars, whether that be with climate action funds or with affordable housing funds. Oftentimes we think of how to access climate action funds to serve affordable housing, but it goes both ways. There's an opportunity to really think about we have significant funds for affordable housing, and we can be leveraging our climate action goals. Thank you.
Thanks, Sammy. Appreciate everyone's comments. I think they were all great observations and feedback. I guess the comment I'll make is, I'm excited by an awful lot of the plan. It's really got so many broad goals, but then a lot of really good specific type goals. But I particularly like the area around land use, because I'd like to see, a lot of these goals and objectives we have, how are we actually going to make them come to fruition, right? There's some specifics here around pursuing perhaps some small land use area plans for, high potential areas, us figuring out where we can grow in the way we want to grow, and to make it easier for that to happen, more expedient, and just kind of, as it said, improve our development approval process in a way that's in line with what we know we want there, because we know we've all bumped into that a lot over the years with not being able to tell someone what we want somewhere. So anyway, that whole part on land use, and then I'm excited about whatever the implementation chapter looks like as well. So, okay, anyone else? Any more feedback? Mr. Manager, Trish, is this a good little set of comments for you? Some good feedback for you?
I'd say yes. I mean, I think you guys agree. Scott, Heidi, any outstanding questions burning? Yes, no, this is great. We really appreciate your taking a look. If you have any other things you want to share, don't hesitate. We will be compiling them, and we really appreciate marked up copy. It's an honor to have somebody read your stuff, right, and find things in it that need to be tweaked, so corrected, added to. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Trish. Heidi, Scott, thanks for being with us tonight. We appreciate you being here. So, and for all your work on everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, Mr. Manager, did we have an action item on that? I think it was just a discussion, right? And providing feedback for the staff, it looks like. So,
yes.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Manager, on to our last item on our regular agenda.
Okay, the next item is Energy and Climate Protection Plan and Community Climate Action Plan Implementation Update. I believe Laura's going to do the presentation on this one.
Good evening, Laura.
Good evening, Mayor Lavelle and Town Council. Great to be here.
Good to see you.
Yes, let me share my presentation. All right. All right, so to start off, oops, I didn't present mode. There you go. All right, to start off, we'll talk a little bit about municipal emissions or initiatives. The first project I want to mention is the Facilities Rehabilitation Project, and that is something that you all have been getting updates on from Public Works, and we're just really excited about it as staff, and it's great to, now that we have net zero definitions as a town and we know exactly what we're aiming for with these buildings, I really look forward to seeing more from that project. In addition, we completed a new inventory, which is something that I'm going to be talking about a little later on in this presentation. Mr. Jacob Becker, a graduate student at UNC, he did a lot of really great work for his master's project on this inventory. And he looked into fugitive methane emissions as well, which is something that I know that you have asked us to look into. We also have money in the budget this year for an analysis of how we could make the town fleet, how we could reduce emissions with our town fleet. There's a lot of things that we've looked at so far. We've looked at hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles, and that on the slide is a picture of the hybrid trash truck that we had. And so there's a lot of things that we've been looking at, but there's also a lot of considerations with, charging infrastructure and different fuels we could use. We've talked with the WASA about maybe even using biodiesel. So because it's such a big question, I'm really glad that we have the funding in the budget to look into it in a really thorough way. And we're going to be starting to talk about this with staff and have a small group that's going to get together, and then we'll be meeting with more staff, and we'll be presenting to you a preliminary RFP for that project. In addition, we submitted 2 proposals to the Orange County Climate Action Grant Program. One is for a solar array and a green roof on the 203 project, and another is for a staff member to monitor the organics collection at the farmers market. Orange County has asked us to help out with that, and right now we have some recreation and park staff that are monitoring it, and so we're looking forward to finding out if those went through, and I'll keep you all informed about that. Next, moving on to the community side of things, we're working to finalize this grant we got from the Volkswagen Fund and NCPEQ to install 2 new electric vehicle charging stations, one in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Park and one in the municipal lot at Rosemary Street. And those are, they've been installed. We're working to finalize, making sure everything's up to code, and then we'll work with Duke to get them turned on. And just been talking to other sustainability staff in the county and in Chapel Hill and Hillsborough about EV charging stations on a larger scale. And a lot of times we get grants that come up really quickly, and we have to kind of, just choose a place where we want to put a station right away. And what we want to do with the county is, how can we really maybe use GIS to create maybe a priority map of where these stations should be. One of the things that we've been thinking about a lot is equity, and where the stations are located, it matters, and especially for the future, as electric vehicles become more and more a part of the community. And so I'm really glad that we're going to be looking at that, and our GIS staff will be helping out with that too. The modules project, we've been working with that. We had the dietary module presented to the EAB earlier this spring, and we're moving forward to finalize some of the details of finance for the Green Neighborhoods Grant Program and start outreach for that. The EAB met over the summer. They had several summer meetings where they talked about climate items, and they had some really good ideas for outreach. So I'm excited about that. In addition, we have a new position that will be focusing a lot on climate, the environmental planner, and that position will be advertised very soon, and really looking forward to getting some good candidates for that. Next, transportation initiatives. We have been meaning to talk about the Fresh Starts project with our partners on that. That's a grant from TJ Cog to create these welcome boxes that are going to go out to new residents in the community and try to they're doing the Center for Advanced Hindsight's doing very rigorous research methods on this. So they're going to be doing a lot of surveys and comparing control groups to groups that get the box, and really trying to see if we can change behaviors and get people to use more alternative transportation. So that's going to be exciting to move forward with that. I think the boxes are going to be going out early 2022, and I think the pilot will run March through May. Next, I mentioned the charging station grants already, and I just wanted to mention that we finalized the contribution to Piedmont EMC for their charging station at Carrboro Plaza. And so the town we're helping to get get this network of charging stations really up and going. And then, as we all talked about earlier with Zach, Walk to School Day is tomorrow, and working on really trying to promote some initiatives for kids to walk to school. In addition, this was something that you all finalized in June before the summer break, text amendment to the land use ordinance to put in place requirements for EV charging stations and infrastructure. So it's great that we are really focusing a lot on electric vehicles lately. In addition, I want to talk a little bit about some ecosystem related initiatives. In the spring, we held, or actually earlier in early 2021, we held a virtual event due to COVID to talk about riparian restoration and streams in general. And public works staff planted 600 live stakes. I really wanted to give them recognition for how hard they work to plant all these materials. And we finalized the reporting for that grant in April 2021. And I wanted to use this time to just show off a picture of on the left side is what the area looked like before we started the project, and on the right is a few weeks ago in Anderson Park. And so I saw a lot of bluebirds flying around. It's really really growing in, and we're going to be continuing to monitor the trees and make sure that they're all doing okay, and that the area is really growing in how we want it to. So I'm excited about that project. And in addition, we're working to finalize some of the requirements for an independent invasive species removal program. And for Beast the USA, we held a film screening for Father's Day that we normally try to hold one every year. This film was about native bees. And we also joined the Mayor's Monarch Pledge this year, and we held a milkweed seed giveaway and some outreach at the farmers market. And we're going to continue to try to make sure we meet all those goals this year as well. I also wanted to mention the Managed Natural Landscapes Ordinance. That is something that you all had on your consent agenda today. And so really glad to see the changes to the ordinance for that as well. We also wanted to mention that we had a really fun event a few weeks ago. The Carrboro High School football team came out. They reached out to us and wanted to do a volunteer event. So we had a huge group. We cut and pulled privet for almost 3 hours. And the picture on the right is a pile of just one of 3 piles that they made. And you need a panoramic picture to show it all. So this was at Anderson Park, and behind some of the fields, there's just a lot of privet really forming this big dense area. So if you're at Anderson Park and you look at the field across the parking lot from the bathrooms, behind that, it's a lot more open now because the privet's all gone. So thank you to Carrboro High School football team for sure. They worked really hard. And then the last thing I want to talk about in this presentation is the greenhouse gas inventory. And so this is a chart with a lot of different numbers on it, but this is a summary of the community emissions. And so what this chart is showing are emissions in 2012 compared to 2019. And one of the things that Jacob looked at in his paper was fugitive methane emissions. So fugitive methane emissions are emissions that might occur somewhere outside of the scope of our normal inventory. And so what our normal inventory looks at, what we've been doing since 2009, are scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. So that is where we take the geographic boundaries of Carrboro and we draw a line there and we say, we're only going to look at, for example, vehicle miles traveled in Carrboro boundaries, because as soon as you would cross over into an adjacent jurisdiction, those miles are going to be counted in their greenhouse gas inventory. So you've got to draw the boundary somewhere, and that's where most municipalities do it, is the geographic boundaries. And so basically what we would look at with fugitive methane emissions would be expanding the scope. And so what Jacob did is he compared there's a reason why there's a question about methane emissions, is that there's the EPA and ICLEI, which is the organization that has a software that we use for this, do the inventory. they use a methane emissions rate of 0.3%. And so there's been discussion by some researchers that this number might not be high enough. Then the EPA, their methodology is kind of a bottoms up method where they look at, they basically try to do estimates using maybe leak rates and things like that. Whereas some people say maybe you should look at top down methodology where you would measure actual methane in the air. And so there's a lot of different ways to do this accounting. And so that's why there's green columns and white columns on this chart, because they're the two different methods of accounting for the methane emissions. The green columns are the 0.3% rate, and the white columns are the rate 3.6%, which is a rate that Professor who's really studied this has used. His name's Professor Howarth from Cornell University. So the way to read this chart is to compare the green columns and the white columns. And so just some things to note about the emissions. There's been a decrease in the emissions due to electricity with the community. Or I'm sorry, there has not. There has been, basically, the big thing to note is that community emissions overall have kind of plateaued. And when you look at these two pie charts, it shows basically the percentage of each category. So electricity, for example, in 2012, it contributed to about 60% of the community's emissions. Now it contributes only 45%. And you can see that there's been more vehicle miles traveled, and natural gas now contributes more than it used to the whole community pie. So what this does is it gives us a good idea of changes that are happening in the community and where can we really focus our efforts to really try to reduce emissions. And when looking at municipal emissions, this is another chart with the columns. So the blue are the 0.3% emissions rate, and the white are the 3.6 emissions rate. And so basically, municipal emissions, you can see that transit.
Laura, I don't think you've advanced it yet. I might be wrong.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're
Which
still on
slide are you seeing now?
We're still on. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. So basically, another big takeaway from this is some of the increases that you see on here. The transit is something that has increased, but transit is something that I know Charbel Hill Transit has really been looking at as far as electric buses and ways to reduce emissions for that. And transit is definitely something great to keep investing in for climate action. The town fleet has increased. That's also it's really great that we are going to have that big study because as you can see, our fuel usage has increased. And then the schools, there's been some increases with their natural gas use as well. And the town has we've looked at our emissions are staying relatively overall. Municipal emissions have increased. And if you look at the difference, the big thing to look at in this grand total is that emissions from community and municipal sectors have stayed relatively the same since 2012. It's depending on which methane emissions rate you use, they've either overall decreased by 4% or increased by 2%. So there's about a 5 to 6% difference in whichever method you use to account for this. Per capita, if you look at that, the population has increased since 2012. So the emissions have decreased a little bit, but overall we've stayed relatively the same with this. And when looking at the pie charts, you can really see how the transit has really increased as well as the fleet. And so really, really glad that we're going to be looking at the town fleet and transportation, and just really excited to keep looking at emissions. We're going to be talking about dietary emissions soon. We've got an analysis that we're discussing with staff, and that dietary would also kind of expand the scope a bit. But now that we have these numbers, I'm really glad, because we just went back and we looked at the plan, and we have a good idea of exactly what our goal is. Our goal by 2030, an 80% reduction in 2010 emissions, excuse me. And what we need to do is really focus on the sectors that we've seen an increase in over the past 6 years. And one thing I will mention is that this inventory does not account for the streetlight change that we did. And the streetlight change was a really big step in municipal emissions reduction. It wasn't finalized until around October, November of 2019, and that's why it's not reflected in this. But I've looked at the bills, and our electricity usage for streetlights has gone down by more than half. And so streetlights are going to be a really big thing to see once we redo this inventory and look at that. And so I think that the biggest thing that I take away from this is that now we know exactly where we are with the community and with the town. And now that we've redone the goals, we have a really good idea of what we need to do in the next 9 years. So that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Laura. What a great report. Appreciate all of that information. Questions for Laura? Comments for Laura? Let's go to Randy first.
Wow. You must have had a great time putting all that data together. Holy moly. Oh, man. Laura, I mean, especially knowing, that now you have a little one at home. I'm particularly impressed because I know what this takes to roll out. So kudos to you. It's beautifully organized, and I think some of the things that you hit upon are fantastic. I would include because where you have in the I don't know, it was in the attachment or whatever, to include the 2 community events that were about food footprint. You were the one who said, oh, well, why don't we talk about, vegan and vegetarian work that's being done in the community as being, a matter of focusing on food footprint. In addition, the Earth Day event and the Pride event were also 8 out of 10 food vendors were Black, brown, BIPOC food vendors. So when we want to talk about highlighting the synergy, that's a perfect example of that. This work is it forms an umbrella for many things. So thank you for the work. It's excellent.
Thank you, Randy. Let's go to Sammy.
Thank you so much, Laura. Great work. Very much appreciate everything you've been doing. I just would, if you can forward your PowerPoint presentation, I'd appreciate it. Just it's hard to look at the graph and really understand exactly what's going on. And also the inventory done by the student, if you don't mind sharing that, if it's available, I'd appreciate that. I think the inventory is essential because it really helps us get a sense of where we are in terms of our goals. And now the next step is to really translate what our projects are in terms of impact on greenhouse gas reduction emissions, and translate that also into costs so that it could be reflected in the work that we requested of our manager back in 2019 per the resolution regarding climate action goals and budget plan. And I mentioned that so that our new manager really takes a look at that, and that we can go forward with what is laid out and requested in that resolution, which really speaks about how to actually implement and achieve the goals of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. But it really requires an allocation of like what these projects represent in terms of impact, and then also ascribing their monetary costs. Some of those are clearly very easy in terms of like the vehicle fleet. Like it sounds like we're on in process of maybe getting a consultant, and they may be able to do a lot of the work on the impact that our reductions might represent. I'm glad you're looking broadly for a vehicle fleet. OWASA does have methane, and they've been trying to work with local governments to maximize the use of that for powering our fleets. And otherwise it's just going to be flared or burned, and it's ongoing forever being produced because we always will be consuming and creating waste in our water system. So yeah, I look forward to getting the implementation committee on board so that they can help us think through and advise the council on how to update our climate action plans and how to follow through with this resolution on how to implement this very specifically. And one last thing, I just just underscore the importance of the climate action work and the allocation of the budget and the prioritization of that in terms of what is coming out of the comprehensive plan. And I feel there's some work that may be new in terms of climate action projects that may not necessarily be included already in our climate action plan, though that's already included in the comprehensive plan, but the other way around, and that we keep an eye out for how to take those items into account too. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Sammy. We got Barbara, then Damon, then Susan.
Oh, no, I'm unmuted. Yeah. Laura, thank you again for your report. It's always really, really good to just see all this work. And I just look and just wonder how a new mother as yourself has all time, the time to do all this. I mean, so you're just doing a great job. Thank you. I just had one question about the invasive species volunteer events. I know I've talked to a couple of folks in the community. They're real concerned about, I think that the two people, one of them was wisteria, and I don't remember the other person, but they were really concerned and kind of felt like, the volunteer events were not enough as far as really getting control of the invasive species. Have you talked to anybody in the community that may have had the same conversation with you? And the next step, I guess, would be maybe something that we don't even want to do, which is some type of potentially some type of chemical treatment. But they were just really interested in, I guess you would say, a more permanent solution to the invasive species.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely the balance we try to find, because it's when you have a smaller group that's maybe just hand pulling some species, the species like wisteria, they can just regrow the next season. And so when you have a big group like what we did with the high school football team, I think that their work really made a big dent. And but yeah, definitely the question of these species, the invasive species, are really tenacious. They can regrow, from very little, stores underground. And so I think the question about using herbicides and things is something that that should be looked at. I know that we definitely want to make sure that we're, really taking everything into account as far as impacts on the environment and human health. And I know I've talked to Public Works recently that we want to revisit our IPM plan, integrated pest management. And part of that plan just talks about using herbicides only as a very last resort, and trying to do other ways of managing vegetation. And I know that there's definitely other methods we can look at that might not necessarily use chemicals. I know that there's ways you can girdle trees where you kind of basically physically prevent it from growing, and that can eventually kill the tree. And so I think it's definitely something we're going to be discussing soon. I think they wanted to have a meeting about that plan soon. So I think there's ways we can really just, yeah, look at what, right, now that we've been working at certain areas for a few years, like at Wilson Park with the wisteria there, we can look at, okay, what is coming back, and what areas do we maybe need to kind of be more creative with our methods that we use, and maybe we look at other methods of physical control, or kind of revisit the issues of are there any sort of anything we could put out there that might have more effect, and whether it's an herbicide or whether it's vinegar or just hot water. There's a lot of things we can look at. So yeah, I agree that it's definitely something that we need to kind of look at, like what impact we're having with all these events.
Yeah, it's a delicate balancing act. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, Barbara. Let's go to Damon and then Susan.
Hey, Laura. Thanks for all the work. It's nice to see it all in one place once again. I know it's a lot, so we appreciate you. Just 3 notes. One, I just wanted to ask if, not to receive this now, but if you wouldn't mind providing some information in writing at some point relatively soon, if possible. I know you're very busy, but just following up on the vehicle miles traveled calculation, I would be just really interested in learning more about how VMTs are accounted for in this inventory that you presented, just so I can understand it a little bit better. There wasn't a lot of information about the calculation of that in the report you provided with the agenda packet or in your presentation. I just want to know more about, I want to understand it better. So I appreciate anything you can help me with there, especially since there's this sort of very intentional decision made about VMTs within the municipal limits of Carrboro and what that means for the overall emissions calculation. Second, just to share, Laura actually probably already knows this just because she knows things that are going on around emissions, but with the rest of the council, that Chapel Hill Transit will be taking delivery of 3 more electric buses this fall, and they should get unveiled, they're thinking around November, maybe a little later. So that'll be adding 3 new electric buses to the Chapel Hill Transit fleet. We also just learned that NCDOT has actually provided a grant to Chapel Hill Transit to cover the local match, about $1.4 million of local match money that we were going to be spending on another order of 7 electric buses. So we had this FTA grant that was going to pay like most of that cost, and then the local partners, Carrboro included, we're going to have to cover the rest. NCDOT has provided a grant to cover that local match, so that's really great news. And we're also going to be installing the charging infrastructure for Chapel Hill Transit, but it's on back order because of some supply issues, like a lot of other things. But there will be some temporary charging infrastructure in place to deal with these incoming shipments of electric buses. The other thing I wanted to mention is I mentioned to folks that last week the DCHC MPO was meeting with our capital area MPO counterparts to talk about some more visionary planning for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. We did have that meeting last week, got great turnout from from community advocates. And I mean, on the Wake County side, not just the Orange and Durham County side, which was really great to see because it meant that Wake County advocates around were putting some pressure on and reminding folks, policymakers, about the need to take bolder action on transportation planning issues. So we feel like that set us on a good path to be working jointly with Campo on this idea we talked about in our last meeting, or maybe it was the one before, about setting out a more visionary metropolitan transportation plan for the 2050 plan. And then finally, some of you may have heard of this vehicle miles traveled, or VMT task force that the NCDOT is putting together as the result of a legal settlement with the Southern Environmental Law Center. The first committee meeting on that for that group is actually happening later this week. So I hope to have some more information to tell you about with respect to vehicle miles traveled, which I'm very bothered by seeing that huge increase for Carrboro there in the emissions report. So to be continued. Thanks again, Laura.
Okay, great. Thank you, Damon. Let's go to Susan, and it looks like Sammy.
Thank you. Laura, thank you so much for I'll just echo what everybody else has said, how having all of this in one place, and we can just really appreciate all the many balls that you have been juggling. I have, it's the lateness of the hour. I'm going to be really quick, just a couple of questions and then one comment. It seems like the street light emissions benefited a lot from the LED lights. I think dropped by about a half, as I recall. And so I was curious, do all the neighborhoods now have LED lights in Carrboro, or is that close but not quite there yet?
Yes, they all should have it. We worked with Piedmont and Duke to change out all the streetlights.
Okay, great. The other thing I wanted to comment on is I loved reading that with the Green Neighborhoods Grant Program, you were using some of the same advertising that was used around the development of the comprehensive plan, and obviously that really worked well with the comprehensive plan in terms of the diversity and the recruitment, and so I was thrilled to read that you're using that as well, and I hope you have the same success with it. And then the only other thing I wanted to ask about, it was great seeing all of these Carrboro the high school football team with the helping with the invasive species, and it seems like it's the problem that never goes away. It'll be back. And I'm curious if, I know that high school kids are always looking for service learning hours. And is this the type of activity that high school kids would be able to get service learning hours? And if so, has that been advertised as a way of maybe getting more students involved in this?
Yeah, definitely. This is, a really great fit for those service hours. And I know before COVID, we have a really active volunteer, Mr. Stephen Feuerstein. He's been really great helping with these volunteer events. And he had been in touch with some of the local environmental science teachers, high school teachers, to let them know about these opportunities. And I think that's something that, as we, things open up more and more with vaccinations, and, we can start doing more bigger group events. Again, I think that this event was really successful. Kids wore their masks when they weren't social distancing. I think we've all seen really great things with people in Carrboro following COVID procedures. So yeah, I think that's definitely something that we, as we continue with this program, and as we have the ability for volunteers to work independently, it would be definitely something that I could try to facilitate groups to get service hours and talk to the teachers to let them know we have this opportunity. The group events really have a really big impact for sure.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I want to thank you, and also before I finish up, I just want to thank Randy too. I know Randy, you had mentioned the modules, all the work that's being done on the modules, and Randy, I appreciate all your work on that as well. I know you've been working hard, so thanks again.
All right, let's see. And I think Sammy, you have something else to add? You want to add?
Yes. I just want to thank Damon for all his updates, really exciting stuff, and encourage, especially with those grants for the electric buses, encourage that we really look at those local matches that we were on the hook for to be allocated to solarize the powering of those buses. Because unfortunately, electric buses are still dirty in that they require Duke energy. And so to whatever extent you can to really push for that amongst the partners. I appreciate it.
Thanks for that. It's a good reminder. And as you know, one of the issues we but what Chapel Hill Transit is doing with this initial set of buses is really
piloting,
testing them out, right? Because there have been some other places, including in North Carolina, where towns and cities went whole hog onto these electric buses, and they hadn't considered some challenges. So I think we're still in that initial stage of testing these new buses out, but I definitely take your point, and thanks for that reminder.
Cool, thanks. And with that, I'd like to move the resolution with one addition. Now therefore be it resolved that the town council refers the town manager to our resolution regarding climate action goals and budget plan passed on June 2019 for him to implement that.
Second.
Okay, say that again, Sammy.
I passed, I moved the resolution with the addition of now therefore be it resolved, the town council refers the town manager to the resolution regarding climate action goals and budget plan from June 2019 for implementation.
Okay, so that was a motion by Sammy and a second by Damon. All in favor say aye. Susan, your hand's up. Is that from earlier? Yeah. All right. All in favor say aye. Susan?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Jackie?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
All right, great. Laura, thanks again for being here with us so late. We really appreciate you. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
All right, let's have a motion to go into closed session.
Motion to go. Oh,
second.
All right,
Yeah.
motion to go into closed session by Barbara, second by Sammy. All in favor say aye. Susan?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Jackie?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Barbara?
aye.
Okay, so Kathy, you tell us when we're all clear.